Hey, welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 174, continuation from last night. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, hello, everyone. How you all doing today? How you doing, dear Mike?
Good brother, yourself.
I am well.
All right. Had to do an update on this because of the breaking news that came out early this morning. I wasn't able to do the live stream this morning because I was at work. Was in too many meetings. I was desperately trying to get the live stream going, but I figured I'd wait till tonight, anyways. We left off last night having a conversation just before the hangout ended about Julian Assange, and I said last night that I wanted to bring up Julian Assange because an arrest was imminent on the horizon, whether it was this morning or by June or November, that there was going to be an arrest this year at some point in the very near future. Lo and behold, we ended the hangout, and I got an alert on my phone in the middle of the night that Julian Assange was being arrested. And when I got up this morning, I saw the video, and so I decided that we were going to have a hangout on this because this is very important. This is probably the most important geopolitical story of the year. It will probably go until next year because there will be many more arrests coming out of out of all of this. So I have been talking about this for quite some time, or we've been talking about this for quite some time on this hangout that you know, Julian Assange and many others who are considered to be journalists would be arrested. We talked about Mazi Hashemi, the black woman who is Muslim and works in Iran for Press TV. She was arrested earlier this year as well. Um, they didn't say what the charges were. They just arrested her based on uh, um, being a material witness, and they held her for 13 days. So and they recently kicked in the doors of her kids just about a week or so ago. So do you see this sort of movement happening with alleged journalists, even going back earlier to a few years ago with Michael Hastings? Michael Hastings was a journalist who had pertinent information about the Obama administration in the Clinton administration, and was going to release it, and he ended up dead. Um, what's happening with Julian Assange right now is that um, he was arrested this morning on charges of computer intrusion, or at least attempted computer intrusion on the DNC servers um, of the Democratic Party. He was accused previously in 2012 about sexual misconduct with women, and according to the women, he didn't use any condoms, so there had to be some kind of DNA evidence. The Swedish police never arrested him for it, or never even questioned him for it, despite the fact that he volunteered himself for this for the interview with the police, and they never came to complete this investigation. So I believe the charges were dropped. And then the Ecuadorian embassy decided that they were going to cut off access to water, visits, even internet, which was his main tool, for communicating with the outside world. That was the only way you knew about his health and his status. Um, this is very interesting because it can go so many ways now. They can accuse you of anything and use the Patriot Act against you. And what's happening with Julian Assange is that they're going after all journalists now. So anybody who claims to be reporting news, anything like that, that has pertinent information about uh, either the deep state or the government itself, they're coming after you. So we're taking a risk, even having conversations on this channel about the stuff that we talk about. I mean, we've been probably 5 for 5 on a lot of our predictions the last 6 months. Lionel, you know that we talked about Amazon going after Sears before it even made news. We were talking about that months before the mainstream media was talking about it, and once the mainstream media caught wind of it, we were right. So there's been several times that we've predicted that something was going to happen in the geopolitical sphere that turned out to be true. So
Yeah, and pertaining to the subject, I remember weeks ago we spoke about how the Ecuadorian government
mhm.
was thinking about changing its tune with Julian Assange, and since that we've seen what you mentioned, the different things that they've done in order to lead up to this point.
Mhm.
And also we have to account what's going on with the um forgot the name, the word I want to use, but the people that's coming up through Mexico to the US border, and how the Ecuadorian,
The migrants.
right, the migrants, and how he's arrested, Julian Assange is arrested in UK, which means he may get extradited
He's
if
being
he,
extradited right now as we speak.
so uh, I agree with you. This can go a lot of different ways, and depending how he's punished will dictate how other people are being punished. And his associate, can't think of her name right now. She was released. She was pardoned by,
Chelsea Manning.
yes, Chelsea Manning. She was pardoned by Obama, and now she's back in jail.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a lot of things that's going on right now that we really have to pay attention to.
Yes, and Chelsea Manning. For those of you who don't understand the story, Chelsea Manning was the one who brought um, the war crimes to that was documented to WikiLeaks, not Julian Assange, but WikiLeaks itself. Julian Assange is a journalist of WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is a publication, and they're accusing WikiLeaks and WikiLeaks and Chelsea Manning of colluding with each other against the U.S. government, which is interesting because Julian Assange is supposed to be a journalist, but when you think about the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, we've read how many articles where an article says an unnamed source. What kind of journalism is that, right? It's like, well, you can't name your sources, then how do we do any fact checks? With Julian Assange, he had named all his sources, and that still wasn't good enough. So, and actually, I think it pissed them off even more because they knew who it was that leaked the information.
Yeah, when people say you can't name their sources, that could be them just saying that they have sources just to disseminate information and pass it off as factual. You know, that's a tricky line to toe when you say, "Well, I have sources, but I can't say what my sources are." It could be true that a person may have sources, but it can be completely false. This person don't have sources; they're just using that as a way to disseminate information. But like you say, he has sources.
Yeah, he had sources. I mean, he never revealed his sources in that sense because if they were confidential. But with Chelsea Manning, they knew who Chelsea Manning was, and everybody knew that Chelsea Manning had gave this information to WikiLeaks. So that's on record and that's known. But my real reason for having this hangout is because this is extremely massive in terms of freedom of speech. Uh, Again, the backstory is that Julian Assange is an Australian who has this publication and happened to be in London and went to the Ecuadorian embassy because the Ecuadorian embassy has a did not have a previous asylum agreement with the United States, so that's why he went there. He was able to hide out there because Ecuadorian government does not need to extradite um, any anybody wanted by the United States to the United States. So that's why he was able to be holded up in there. So legally speaking, they couldn't just rip him out of there. And if they did, it would be a big egg on the face of the Obama administration. So with that being said, the Ecuadorian government had tore up the previous agreements that they had of asylum and basically rewrote it and left Julian Assange out to dry, and there was nowhere for him to go. His health is really bad. It's been deteriorating for quite some time. He hadn't seen a doctor, hadn't seen a dentist, didn't have a change of clothes. Being in a confined space for that long is a lot of mental drain. And then he had no internet. He had no internet access, so he had no way of communicating with anybody. He just sat in a room for about 7 years now. So
yeah, and a lot of people have been saying that itself should reduce, in a perfect world, that itself should reduce his sentencing, because he was somewhat solitary confined. I mean, there were people that visited there, but it wasn't nowhere near to say, well, he wasn't confined to one area, and he was confined to that, was 7 years or something?
yeah, just about 2012 to now, until this morning.
So that, in a perfect world, journalists are saying that should contribute to his sentencing, in 7 years or something of equal value should be stricken from his sentencing, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of people are asking, what do you think the United States is going to do with him? A lot of people think that this is Trump going after him. I've said it last night that this would be a big victory for Trump, because Trump could throw down the gauntlet and say, "See, I got the Julian Assange. I got him. I got WikiLeaks." But see, when Trump was running for president during his campaign, he loved WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was exposing information about the DNC and Hillary Clinton. He didn't, see, he loved WikiLeaks then. He said himself, "I love WikiLeaks. I love Julian Assange." But now that, he's starting to spill information about both parties in the United States. See, the deep state is out for Julian Assange. They want to take this guy down. They are very angry. Hillary Clinton said it herself in an interview. We should drone the crap out of him. This is where we are right now. They're talking about killing people for revealing information that should be publicly known. Again, the backstory here is that the DNC server was not hacked. The FBI wanted to do the forensics on the server, and that server was kept away from the FBI and given to somebody called CrowdStrike, a group of cybersecurity professionals. And they were not able to find any logs about a cybersecurity breaking. So what happened was they had what they call DLP, data loss prevention, that was not enabled. This allowed a person to stick in that USB thumb drive and extract that data out, and then exfil that data to any other place on the internet, upload it to the dark web, and actually send it to WikiLeaks. They blamed Julian Assange for it, but in reality, it wasn't Julian Assange who did it. So then what happened was they blamed it on the Russians. And recently they found out, after all this investigation, that it was not the Russians who did it. Malcolm Nance was one of the big proponents behind the idea that it was the Russians. You can't trust Moscow. It was Putin. This, and that. I went back and forth with BGS on this over a year ago, and I told BGS on his hangout that Malcolm Nance is a paid is a shill for the deep state. He's not a cybersecurity guy, so he has no idea what he's talking about. It doesn't matter if he worked for the agency. He has no idea what he's talking about because there was no logs presented. In order for you, logs are receipts. In order for you to say that it was so and so, you had to have logs. But what we found out from all this investigation was that the CIA left these artifacts, what we call artifacts, behind that made it look like it was the Russians, but it wasn't the Russians. So now you have to go back and say, well, who really did it? Oh, well, it was Assange and his guys, WikiLeaks. You see, everybody jumped on the bandwagon when I was telling them a couple of years ago that this was not true. This was not true. This was not a cybersecurity break-in. If it was a cybersecurity break-in, why didn't the FBI get a hold of the server? Why were they holding the server for so long? Why did Hillary Clinton's Blackberries and her iPhones get smashed with a hammer? What were they hiding? This is all tied in with Libya. This is all tied in with the killing of Gaddafi and the Tuaregans, the black people who were, over 50,000 of them killed in the genocide. There's a whole lot of things that's going to come out that WikiLeaks has that is going to come out. WikiLeaks is still going to go on, regardless of Julian Assange is extradited. But for the most part, there's a whole lot of information that can bring down the U.S. government. Even Snowden tweeted this morning that this is a tragedy for journalism. First, they went after Chelsea Manning. Then they went after Hastings. Ulysses, you have a lot of noise in the background, brother.
Oh, sorry about that.
And there's several other journalists that and whistleblowers that they went after. This isn't Trump. This isn't the Republican Party. These are people who are unelected officials who are making decisions to go after people and make geopolitical strategies behind the scenes. So essentially what I'm just saying here is that, you have to be mindful about the information that we put out here. A lot of the times when we put out information, some people will come here and say, oh, you guys are fake news. Well, guess what? We were talking about this 5 or 6 hours before it even happened. Zol Royalty, and DE. And we talked about Julian Assange being on the verge of arrest. Lo and behold, this morning he's arrested. How do we know all this? We read the tea leaves. We did the research.
All signs are there.
Absolutely.
All signs are pointing to it. And Rael mentions they still haven't solved the murder of the DNC guy. Okay.
Yeah,
you're referring Seth Rich. He's basically he's a key figure in all of this. Because if it wasn't for him, basically it wouldn't have been known that the elections were being rigged in Florida, and quite a few other things, because he was actually a database administrator for the DNC. That was actually what his role was.
He was actually a Bernie-crat.
And that's what he was too, because he was working for the DNC, not necessarily the Clinton campaign. Okay, so when he saw the funny business that was going on, he basically he released it on the low, and they caught wind and took him out. Okay, now WikiLeaks is who basically pointed the finger at who took him out. Okay, and Assange he stopped short of basically saying it, but suggested it. So there's a number of things tied directly into the DNC side of things, as it relates to all of this. This is why I'm very curious as to what Trump's angle is going to be, because during the election, he was bigging Assange up for putting all this out there. So I'm very curious as to if he's extradited to the United States, what happens with him.
He should be here by Friday night. They said 20 hours he'll be extradited to the United States. So What's going to happen to him, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that he'll probably do about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
John, there's another whistleblower. I want to say his name, John Kiriakou. I think that's his name.
Okay.
I think he's another whistleblower as well, like Chelsea Manning. See, the rearrest of Chelsea Manning is consistent with this. I knew that something was going to happen because why would Obama? You have a lot of feedback, brother.
Oh, okay. Let me mute.
Why would they rearrest Chelsea Manning after all of that? Chelsea Manning has already done her time. So what else could they possibly get her on charges for and get him and arrest Mazi Hashemi? So if you're getting people, if you're going after journalists now selectively, I mean the killing of Michael Hastings, people say it's an accident. He ran into a tree in California. But that's not consistent. Daimler, Mercedes-Benz came from Germany with engineers who wanted the black box on that Mercedes because they looked at that.
I remember that.
Right. They looked at that and said, our cars don't do that. That's impossible for an engine that weighs 500 pounds to separate itself from the vehicle yards down the road. You have to have tremendous impact for an engine to unbolt itself from the chassis of a vehicle and to skip down the road in an accident. That's never happened. In my experience of dealing with cars, I've never seen anything like that before, even in racing.
Only time I've ever seen it is like a top fuel dragster. That's literally the only time. In a regular old road going production car, unless it was compromised, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole lot of moving pieces here, and I want to get DE here in on this. What's going on, brother?
I'm all right. How you guys doing?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
Doing well, man.
Oh, pretty good. Had a great day.
Hey, y'all hit the like button, please. Y'all listen to this. Hit the like button. We got 30 people watching, 15 likes, man. Hit the like button. Go ahead, D.
Man, I'm looking at this thing. I don't think he's gonna get a really harsh punishment because for some reason I'm thinking that there's a deal made. There was a deal made to get him. And Trump really didn't want to do it, but he probably was forced into the situation. I think part of the deal had to do with Trump and his escape from some of the things that he did. Not necessarily, not the Russiagate thing, but things that they found out about Trump, about his business. Not that he did anything colluded with the Russians to do anything with the election, but outside the election and his own business and the people around him and what they were doing. And I think WikiLeaks gave Trump information to use against these people. That's my opinion from what I'm seeing. Because when the information started coming out about what they were doing, it seemed like it had a lot of individuals, people in the government who were there, but they weren't working for, like, say the government in the U.S. is basically, the president is basically to a front man. He's like the CEO of a corporation who, if you're a CEO of GE, when you go to Saudi Arabia, you want to sell your engines, you want to sell, washing machines, you know what I'm saying? Everything that your company makes. And the United States is there. It's like the queen going overseas to fly the flag. That's equal to that. But you got people in the government who do things who make deals on the side that benefit them and their friends, who put them in the government. Like Warren Buffett might call up the president and say, "Hey, our company wants to do business in such place. Can you handle it?" Yeah. So he send the ambassador to do something like that. But when you got like the Secretary of State, who her handlers send her to Libya to take down Gaddafi, or to Syria to take out Assad. Then you got people working on behalf of the United States government. They're working on their own behalf, but when they get the government into the program, now the government has to do what's best for it. You understand? When you put like Barack Obama, they were trying to force him into a war. They were trying to force him to open a front in Libya and Syria, and he tried his best not to. But in the background, guess who was doing it? Hillary, and she was making deals all over the place. So when stories like that start coming up, people die, like you guys said, people die and can't figure out why they die. But after the report's been written, and it's been written a certain way, you can't go back and change it. So the computer's been compromised, but it's not been compromised by the Russian. Nobody broke into it. Somebody copied it. So who's copied? Who put the who hooked up the copier to the machine and walk away with a stick in their pocket, and gave out the information. So these are the things that made me believe that Trump found out who was doing all these things, and he went to the people and said, "Hey, you guys better stand down. Otherwise, I'm going to be the one who is doing what WikiLeaks won't do."
Hey, Mike, I'd like to read an article. I want to post an article and read it. It's from okay, it's from the Washington Post. I'm going to go ahead and post it here. Okay. This article
do you want us to display it on the screen as well?
Yeah, hold on. Let me send it to you in the. Oh shoot, because I'm on the Hangout on my phone. Can you grab the link out of the chat? I just dropped it in there.
Yeah, let me do that.
All right, and then I'll go ahead and read it. Because I think this will give us more of a rounded edge view of what we're looking at, and then all of these kind of juicy bits and details that we're talking, we can start to put it into a broader context with this article here.
We can't see it, man. It's
Oh, what?
Yeah, they want you to pay $1.
Oh, okay. I ain't paying them jack shit, but I got it right here, so I'll go ahead and read it. Okay. It's in Ecuador, Assange's expulsion reflects desire for better relations with the U.S. For almost 7 years, Ecuador's government weighed the risk and rewards of providing a haven to Julian Assange at the country's embassy in London, a diplomatic hire act that put the small South American nation at odds with one of its most important partners. So that's to give you the context right there. By Thursday, Ecuadorian officials, eager to improve trade and other relations with the United States and exasperated by what they described as the WikiLeaks founder's overbearing presence, had reached a decision. A gamut that began as a show of anti-U.S. defiance by a leftist Ecuadorian president collapsed with Assange's expulsion and arrest under that president's more moderate successor. So what we're talking about here is a change in leadership in the country of Ecuador, which largely serves as the impetus, and the more moderate president of Ecuador now more or less desires to have more favorable ties with the United States. That's the impetus for this. The patience of Ecuador has reached its limits, President Lenin Moreno said after British police arrested a bearded Assange and escorted him to a vehicle. It had become increasingly clear in Ecuador that Moreno's politics would lead eventually to Assange's removal from the embassy. He now faces extradition to the United States to face a charge of a conspiracy to hack a classified Defense Department computer. The political scientist Joaquin Hernandez said sympathy for Assange had dwindled in the nation of 17 million, where many had come to see him as a political imposition. The costs of maintaining him in the embassy and his ungrateful attitude were offensive, said Hernandez, dean of Universidad Espiritu Santo in Guayaquil. The decision to grant refuge to Assange in 2012 was made by Moreno's predecessor, Rafael Correa, a leftist whose relationship with the United States had grown increasingly contentious. In 2007, Correa refused to renew the U.S. lease of a military base in Ecuador unless Ecuador could open its own its own base in Miami. He accused U.S. officials of spying on him. In 2011, he expelled the U.S. ambassador. Again, this is to give you guys all context. Sheltering Assange further strained the relationship. U.S. authorities say Assange agreed to help a U.S. Army intelligence analyst break a password to the Defense Department's computer network in 2010. In an indictment unsealed Thursday, prosecutors say Chelsea Manning, then known as Bradley Manning, gave WikiLeaks hundreds of thousands of classified U.S. records, including diplomatic cables and reports of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Which is interesting because if I recall, Bradley Manning at the time was a data specialist and actually copied the files and sent them. So I think it's a bit disingenuous and a bit dishonest to actually charge Julian Assange with helping Bradley Manning do it. Bradley Manning already did it and sent it to him.
Right. Exactly. He had access to all the information. It came out in his trial that he had access to information that he didn't have to get Julian Assange to help him break into the computer. So I don't know how they're gonna do that.
Right.
That's why I said, remember I sent you guys when they sent the email, I said, look, these charges don't look like they can stand because the charges. I thought the charges going to be like he's going to be charged with some kind of espionage or something like that. These charges are very. If you got good lawyers, they can go to court and prove that he didn't do it.
Right. So exports from Ecuador.
Thing that they made a deal.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and continue reading this here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exports from Ecuador to the United States fell from $10.87 billion in 2014 to $7.47 billion in 2015. And Ecuador turned to China to finance massive infrastructure projects with loans that swelled the national debt. For a while, an oil boom helped buoy Ecuador's economy, but the price of oil and other commodities fell, and by the time Moreno was elected president in 2017, he was forced to reckon not only with the geopolitical legacy of his predecessor, but also with an economic recession. Seeking help, Moreno signed a $4.2 billion loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund and inched closer to the United States. Vice President Pence thanked Moreno in Quito last year for the improvement in relations. The actions that you've taken have brought us closer together once again, Pence said. Moreno called Assange a stone in the shoe and an inherited problem. Okay. The relationship between Ecuador and Assange unraveled over issues large and small. Moreno accused WikiLeaks of intercepting his private messages and releasing private photos of his family. The embassy ordered Assange to pay for his own health care and to clean up after his cat. Mr. Assange has violated the agreement we reached with him and his legal counsel too many times, Moreno said this month. In the Ecuadorian Parliament on Thursday, Foreign Minister Jose Valencia laid out a 9-point argument for why Assange had to leave the embassy, citing problems including bad behavior, deteriorating health, and threats he allegedly made against Ecuador. Assange skateboarded, played soccer, and physically shook a worker at the embassy, Valencia said. He used his speakers at 1:30 a.m. He accused Assange of installing an unauthorized camera and bringing in suitcases and boxes that were not inspected. Assange's lawyers did not respond to Valencia's claims. Lawyer Jennifer Robinson told reporters that this precedent means that any journalist can be extradited for prosecution in the United States for publishing untruthful information about the United States. I think that is the most important underlying note of all of this, right there. Hernandez, the political scientist, said it made no sense to keep maintaining a man who fails to understand and despises the country. Assange is grateful to Correa, not to Ecuador, he said. Francisco Rodriguez, chief economist at Torino Capital in New York, said the revocation of Assange's asylum status seems to be part of the political quid pro that comes with improving relations with the United States. Vis-a-vis. Moreno said that before expelling Assange, he received assurances from the British government that Assange would not be extradited to a country where he could be tortured or sentenced to death. The British government has confirmed it in writing in accordance with its own rules, Moreno said in a video posted on Twitter. The charge on which Assange has been indicted does not carry the death penalty. Alejandro Olivares, a political scientist with the Faculty of Latin American Social Sciences in Ecuador, said that expelling Assange is unlikely to be popular. In general, in Latin America and in Ecuador, there's always a problem when a government does something which is seen as very pro-U.S., he said. People ask, why are you doing the dirty work for the U.S., especially in the Trump era? So even within, just in this article, even within Ecuador, you're getting two opposing views. One view stated that, a lot of people were kind of like, to hell with him, get rid of him, right? And then he's saying, okay, people are kind of like, dude, why are you doing anything that benefits them, the United States? Mm-hmm. So you're even then, you're getting kind of like two sides here. But in the specific case, it's more of an issue between those who support Correa and those who don't. Correa, now living in Belgium, is wanted by the justice system in his homeland over alleged links to a 2012 political kidnapping. Moreno, once Correa's vice president, Correa's vice president. So the guy who's the president now was the vice president when the former president was president, who granted Julian Assange asylum. Mm-hmm. But over the past year, he has been eager to distance himself from his former ally. After Assange's expulsion and arrest Thursday, Correa tweeted that Moreno was the greatest traitor in Ecuadorian and Latin American history. God damn. Members of Ecuador's parliament were divided over the decision on Thursday. That's interesting, too. Mm-hmm. Why does the United States want him to shut up? Why does the United States want him to shut up, said one lawmaker, Juan Cardenas. In the United States, there is the death penalty. He continued, I ask the world to forgive an Ecuador that is not represented by this decision. But most supported the move. Every coherent Ecuadorian salutes this decision of the government, said Marcelo Sambanya, a member of Ecuador's parliament. But it is strange how much time has passed. It was a series of historical errors that gave Assange asylum in 2012. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not even sure Ecuador knows how to feel about this.
Well, because the people who gave him asylum are, were basically the people who were opposing to the United States in the first place. There was a time, excuse me, there was a time when Latin America was united against the United States. They basically told the United States if Cuba can't show up to the OAS, then neither can the United States. And what that did for the United States it took them aback because they spent a lot of time in the Middle East. They were in Iraq, they were in Afghanistan, they were all over the Middle East, and they did not have enough resources to actually address the Latin American issue. And what this did for Latin America is it gave them a lot of solidarity that they were missing for quite some time, including Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, the president of Brazil, Bolivia, and Venezuela, and Cuba, and Nicaragua, and most of the Latin American states all had pretty much the same equal footing, geopolitically speaking. So Assange really needed to. There's been many, not so much as conspiracies, but there's been many thoughts about, well, maybe we can, if Assange jumps over the banister and there's a car waiting for him, we can get him out of London. There was really nowhere else for him to go. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning of something major that's going to happen, because if they're going after him, they're going to go after other people. So anybody who claims to be a citizen journalist, they're going after them too. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what makes this all the more interesting are the promises of even more implicating leaks, right? In the event that something does happen to him. So, I mean, it's kind of like this is, like you said, this is like actually the beginning of it. The whole 7 years that he's been like kind of holed up in that embassy was kind of like the crescendo or the build up period to what we're looking at now. Because just imagine what is it that could be that would be released in the event that they do something to him. I mean,
in terms of.
I mean, because well, he's hinted at it. He's hinted at the fact that, there's contingency plans, and then there's contingency plans for those contingency plans, and then there's contingency plans for those contingency plans, right? In the event that something does happen to him, right? In terms of the release of even more damning information.
Oh,
so, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that they put in enough contingency plans for WikiLeaks, to make sure that that none of the information goes away, that none of the servers go down. I'm pretty sure they scattered most of their servers all across different continents, in order to assure that the information doesn't go away. There's several people that work in WikiLeaks that don't get the credit that they probably should, but Julian Assange is a part of the branding of WikiLeaks. You think WikiLeaks, you think about this. Very medieval looking white boy who's conspicuously handsome to a lot of women, which is interesting of why women would accuse him of raping them. Like, why would he need to rape you?
Right.
Yeah, why would he need to rape you? He's banging out just about every girl that comes in his path. I think that's a story that was a cooked up. That was something that was cooked up. That was kind of like pre-Me Too. You know what I mean? Like, he banged some chick, and then after the fact, oh, he raped me. Yeah. Yeah. Because they said women were trying to get to him at these parties and these events. So it was just a matter of it was just a matter of accusing him. But I wish Zoe Royalty was on here, because I'm pretty sure he has a lot to say about this. We got 30 people watching, 26 likes. Please hit the like button if you're watching or if you're listening. This is very important information. I'm surprised that this hadn't taken place sooner. Typically, somebody in the chat said it was actually Keep It Techie. Ultimately, the U.S. just wants to make an example out of him. If they could get Snowden, they would as well. Yeah, that's an interesting point. A lot of people say, Snowden went to Russia because that's the only place that could protect him. It's not that so much he went to Russia because that's the only place that could protect him. That's when they revoked his passport. He got stuck in the terminal. He couldn't get on the plane, so he was stuck in Russia, and Russia decided to give him asylum. And then when Trump came to power, they decided to Trump said he's going to get Snowden, and that's when Putin said, I don't think so. He renewed he gave him citizenship, basically, or extended his asylum, but basically he's at a point of citizenship. He's been there for 7 years now. So, in Russia, you can't get droned by a U.S. drone, so he's safe there. I don't think they're going to be able to get him out. Now, he does make a good bargaining chip to many of the geopolitical issues on the table. They'll give you Snowden if you just take NATO off my border. That's a very good trade. I highly doubt that the U.S. would even go for something like that, but that's actually probable trade. I don't doubt that the Russians would actually give him up for that.
No, they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. No. I mean, because I think these are like their human assets, right? There's things that they know. And the knowledge that they have is not necessarily worth trading, right? For, say, like some border security or something, when that asset has information that could probably get that for you anyway, and get it for you because look, if you were to trade Snowden for, like the scenario that you just suggested, what's to say that that's going to be a clean break trade at the end of the day, and then everybody just kind of goes off into their own corner? No, you already know that the United States doesn't do things right to just kind of walk away from the table and just say, "Yep, we're good with our part of what we got out of the deal." That never happens. So I don't see that being the case because Snowden is much more of an asset alive and in Russia. There's information an intricate understanding and a knowledge of things. He has the ability to kind of analyze what's going on there and then relay it back. You know, so I couldn't see Russia like pursuing anything like that either.
Yeah, but he's still a geopolitical piece. That's something that Putin could hang his hat on. That I got one of your guys. They came here. We didn't seek him out.
That's kind of how, that's kind of how I see it. How Putin sees, yeah.
I'm just reading the comments. Section.
Yeah, there's a question down at the bottom there. Besides trading Snowden, does he have value to Russia? Yeah.
Well, he knows what Russia already knows. A lot of information that he has is not something that Russia really needs. It's not. You have to remember that nation-state intelligence is very sophisticated. One guy like Snowden showing up with a USB thumb drive is not anything new to the Russians. The Russians can break into your servers all the way from Moscow. Why would they need to? Unless it's something proprietary, they don't really need that. You're not adding anything to their intelligence portfolio. Even China didn't want him in Hong Kong. They made sure they got his ass right up out of there. They already interrogated him. So the Black Cyber Network says definitely using Snowden as a display to make people think America is more evil than Russia. I don't know if I agree with that. We have to keep in mind, even Putin brought this point up a few years ago that Russia wasn't built off of African slaves. You don't have a right to talk about us. Basically, his point in Russian. That the United States owes black people reparations for slavery, and you have no right to talk about them. I don't see the correlation in that statement. So, Dr. Yaya, what's going on? Long time no see. LeJohn in the chat says, besides trade, now what was I looking at? Section 31 says, in Russia, they are using GPS location spoofing software to keep them from pinpointing. Yeah, but that's to throw NATO off. It's not so much of to try to hide Snowden, if that's what you're referring to. Snowden is not anybody that they're going to jam up, GPS signals to protect him. He'd be the last person they protect. If anything, the last time I heard from Snowden, he tweeted this morning, but prior to that, he was learning Russian or something like that. Probably found himself a Russian girlfriend. I can't imagine that he would allow that other chick that he was with from the United States to show up there with some kind of transponder on her body.
Or some sort of glass smudge, right? He steps away, she smudges his glass, he takes a drink from it, he's dead.
Yeah.
Something ill. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not stupid. I know you have anything you want to add? Anything else you want to add to this?
I'm just listening and learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to kind of maybe even add some more background to why there might be some people that really wanted their hands on Assange because this was one of the more downplayed angles of the WikiLeaks DNC stuff that was going on during the 2016 elections, and that was like the Podesta emails with John Podesta, and where that stuff came out.
His password was password. Nobody broke into his system. They just knew they just put the right credentials.
Right. And so WikiLeaks ended up putting out information about I guess there was information in a lot of those cables about child trafficking and all kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, Pizzagate.
Yeah, Pizzagate. So I'm gonna post the wiki link to that. So just so that people can kind of get a sense of like what all the crazy, because you largely haven't heard much about WikiLeaks or cable releases or stuff like that. I'm not sure media if that's media associated. I'm not sure if that's the case, but you haven't heard much about that. But see, during the election, man, WikiLeaks was dropping. There was just stuff coming out seemingly like every single day, and it was very damning to like much of more of the bigger players in the DNC and the people affiliated with the DNC. So that's another probably like another piece. There's some other individuals looking to get their hands on him as well. Greetings, Paul.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Mr. Paul Bryant, what's going on, brother?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Okay. You have anything you want to add about what's going on here in terms of Mr. Assange being arrested?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Sorry. Good morning. I am 6 hours ahead, so it's like 3:30 in the morning for me. But yeah. So Assange being arrested, and I've been reading the chat a few, just 3 minutes. A lot of interesting comments going on. But see, people have to understand something, all right? Whenever you see things like this, you have to understand the way geopolitics actually works. All right. There is what's for public consumption, and then there's what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the thing with Assange, this is a lot of it's public consumption because at this point, it's more so of the parties concerned. And I don't mean the U.S. government. I mean the puppet masters, right? The wealthy elite, the men in the dark field, smoky rooms. Some names you know, some names you don't. It's more about letting things come out. It's everything that has not been released that they don't want released in any way at all. Okay, so in as much as it's about we want Assange silence, we want him quiet because whatever he still has, all right, they know what he has. So it's a case of what more does he have, and they don't want that getting out. So when you see Putin and you speak of the KGB, you know those guys they don't really care so much about Snowden.
Right.
Snowden, that's for public consumption. Even with Assange, it's all public consumption. It's public theater. The whole thing with the courts and he's being extradited, that's all for public theater. At the end of the day, it's about what does he have. They don't know they don't know the full extent of what he has. They know some of what he has, which has not been released, and they want to make sure it does not see the light of day ever.
Mm-hmm.
So the court and everything else and the extradition, that's all for public theater. If all of this could have been done quietly, it would have been done a long time ago. For whatever reason, see, my question is, why wasn't this done quietly a long time ago?
Well, he happened to sneak into that embassy, for asylum, so that's why they couldn't get him before. But in terms of BGS in the chat, what's going on, BGS? He says IMF bribed Ecuador to get him $4.2 billion. Getting Julian Assange is one thing, but getting the data from WikiLeaks is another. They still have not gotten this data.
Exactly.
They need to get the data, and they cannot get the data because it is strategically placed all over the world in different sort of servers that they just cannot seem to find. I think a lot of these servers actually are cold storage, I know knows about core storage from the he's not even on here anymore. But cold storage means that it's offline. So basically, when you need the resources, you can spin it up and it will come back online. A lot of that storage is hitting all over around the world.
Which is exactly my point. That's the point that I'm trying to get to. That Assange really, as I said, it's public theater. It's really not even about Assange. You know, the parties in question, they know a little bit of what he has, but they don't know the full extent. They want to know everything that he does have so that they can suppress it. So in a way, he's kind of like a bit of an insurance policy. All right. It's like that cold storage basically is his insurance policy. That's the only thing literally keeping him alive right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because the day that the concerned parties have the full extent of what he has and have the ability to get to that, rest assured he will stop breathing. Rest assured. Don't even think anything other than that. And that's the only reason he's even still alive. That's why we're seeing all of this public theater.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as to the wider implications, you know, again, the questions need to be asked, you know, as I said in that email response, you know, that Jack Charles asked. When it comes to the mainstream media, there is no such thing as free speech. Mainstream media is all controlled by the wealthy elite who control the mainstream media and control governments worldwide. You know, I heard you make mention of Pizzagate. You know, that's something that I've mentioned myself several times. Me Too is not a real story. Pizzagate, that's the real story. All right. Me Too was put forward to silence Pizzagate. That's the real story. That's where people need to be looking. So when you see someone like Assange and you see Snowden, you know, it's not about either of those two men. It's about the information they still have that has been unreleased. Okay. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that even if they did try to get Snowden, they don't have the data. I mean, he dumped that data a long time ago.
Right.
He's too. If I remember correctly, he has a photographic memory as well. So he's too clever. He's one step ahead of the deep state for what it is. Assange is one step ahead of the deep state as well, if not two steps ahead. I mean, he did the Panama Papers as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you know he's 1 and 2 steps ahead. He has dirt on the Russians that he's released as well. So Russia is not too happy with him either, or at least the oligarchs aren't. They're not too happy with him. So he could never go to Russia. He'd probably get his head beaten. But in terms of go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead, finish, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just going to say that. So in terms of all of these guys, including Chelsea Manning, as she's a woman now, but they're using these people as scapegoats. They're using these people. You guys made me lose my train of thought, man.
I did. It was you.
You said it.
Yeah, I didn't say it.
But because they tortured her. Remember, they tortured her in jail. I mean, they did a number on her. Imagine what they're going to do to Assange. They're gonna squeeze Assange for every little thing that they can get from him if he's still alive to make it through. Because what they did to
well, I was just gonna say, Mike, I think that's where the threat of the release of more information comes into play. Mm-hmm. And I think with the nature of WikiLeaks, you know, it wasn't they weren't WikiLeaks isn't something that is amassing information like on the U.S. to use it against the U.S. to put it out. Dude, WikiLeaks amasses information on every goddamn country on the planet.
You guys know what you guys not say. Look, Assange is not on the same level as Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning is doing out of a sense of well, you know what, duty. Like Assange is like a face. He is not the people behind WikiLeaks. The people behind WikiLeaks are not Assange. They are the people who has this information. And these people don't use the information until they find it absolutely necessary. If you guys go back and see when Clinton was impeached, they didn't just let him go.
Mm-hmm.
There was somebody in the background saying, hey, look, if you put him, if he's gonna stay there and he's gonna do the job that we want him to do, and you guys gonna lay off. And guess what? They laid off.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, this thing is a trade-off. A lot of trading has been going on, you know. You guys are saying, well, Complex says it's all due to this thing with Ecuador, but that's not the only piece. That is a piece of the puzzle, yeah, but that's not the only piece.
100%. 100%.
The United States went through South America, and one by one, they took out everybody that told them they cannot come to that conference if Cuba don't come.
Exactly.
Took them out one by one. Mm-hmm. I think there's only 3 of them who's standing out today, and the one in Bolivia is one guy.
Yeah, Nicaragua.
Cuba is another, and Venezuela is the only one. And they killed Nicaragua. And the president of Venezuela is dead.
Right, and
there's a lot of background noise that people are not paying attention to. You know what I'm saying? And there are things that you cannot say because people there are things that I've heard that I can't come here and say on this thing because people want to know if I'm crazy.
No,
when I heard it, and from the people I heard it from, I believe them.
Listen, DE, I would say this. 1, always speak your mind. People will tell you you're crazy because they don't know. It's not that you're crazy. When you know something that the masses do not know, you're going to be called crazy. Given enough time, you will tend to be borne out to be correct, true, and factual. And you're speaking to exactly what I was saying earlier. This is largely public consumption. It is not about Assange. It is not about Snowden. And as I've said, it's not even about the governments, because these governments and these heads of state are all puppets. I do not focus on what the puppet does. I care only about the puppet masters. I've said that consistently from the time that I have been speaking to you gentlemen. All right?
Yeah, but all the puppet masters do not agree.
Exactly.
That is correct. That is correct. However, it's not about the puppets. It's about the puppet masters.
I know, but all the puppet masters do not agree. They're actually fighting each other.
Which is my point exactly. Mm-hmm. I don't care about what's for public consumption. It's not about the puppets. It's about the puppet masters. So even what people see in public consumption, even that is only a game, which is why I don't focus on
you don't spend $4.2 billion on bread and circuses. This is for real.
I tend to disagree. I think we
can agree. I think we can agree to disagree on that.
You don't spend $4.2 billion on this, and you've been trying to pull these strings for 5 years. This is real. This is real. They want to make an example out of him, just like they did Chelsea Manning.
Well, I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying for you guys' sake, we can agree to disagree.
Oh yeah, well that's obvious. Yeah, I mean it's obvious. You don't spend that kind of money, for Ecuador, giving Ecuador $4.2 billion to give this dude up.
Yeah, but BGS, I agree with that. But why? You see the charge that they charged him has nothing to do with espionage.
It doesn't.
You broke into a computer and they can carry 5 years, but we might give you 2 or 1.
By the time this dude comes out of prison, if he does go to prison, if he does make it that far, he might not have any brain cells left.
I understand that, but you know what? $4.2 billion is a drop in the bucket when we're talking trillions. We're talking control of the masses of the planet. It is a drop in the bucket, and if it's all part of the game,
$4.2 billion for one man is a lot of money, boss. I don't care how you count it.
It's not going. It's not going into the president's pocket.
It wasn't just for that. It was for information. It was for do you know and who is doing what with what they know that you gave them.
Because whatever Julian Assange knows is 5 or 6 years old.
You know what? I think we shall agree to disagree to some extent because
I'm not sure if I agree with that one.
It is not about Assange. It is not about Assange, and it is about the information.
Okay. Well, then you said it's behind. What's behind it? What's behind it? Go ahead and speak on it.
It is not as I said before.
So give us the background.
Allow me the courtesy of completion, please. It is not about Assange, nor is it about Snowden. It is about the information gathered by the individuals in totality that these gentlemen work with, as DE stated, as I have stated. So the men, the puppet masters, are not aware of the full extent of all the information that they have. They have an inkling, they have some clue. They are not aware of the full extent. And until they find the full extent, both of these men, Assange and Snowden, are merely for public consumption.
No, okay, you have to understand something, because no matter how high people go, how low people go, human beings are still human beings, and trust and believe the puppet masters, as you call them, are human beings, and they do seek revenge, and they will pay good money to have revenge on your head.
That's true. That's
true.
So basically, they already know that whatever Edward Snowden had, the information he had, and they know what it is because they track good people like Mike can actually backtrack his work and find out what he snatched. They already know what he has. Okay. The thing is that it's at a certain point. It's not about Snowden. It's about, one, making an example out of him, and two, revenge. And they want revenge on Snowden. Snowden, I wouldn't, if I was Snowden, I would not get on any plane ever again.
Well, he's not going anywhere. He's staying in Russia permanently, unless he decides that he's had enough of Stoica vodka or some shit like that.
Unless he's ready to meet his maker, because that's what's going to happen to him on site.
Yeah, well, he won't let that girlfriend that he had come up there either. So he's not stupid.
Of course.
But a lot of his information is offline now. It's not even up for discussion anymore. He's not touching that stuff anymore. It doesn't have anything to gain from it.
Correct.
But at this point, I'm saying they're going after just about any and everybody that they can to justify getting rid of free speech. Because if this is the case, all of those journalists at the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the New York Post, and the LA Times, they're all journalists too, and they release information about about Trump that was pertinent to him. Why aren't they going after those people?
Case in point.
Because they need. I think he asked me that question. Did he not?
Easy, guys, easy. Just go ahead.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, the thing is you're using these people as an example for the next person.
Right.
So why do you go hard on Chelsea Manning and try to do crazy to where he has a sex change? Because you're making an example. That's what punishment is there for.
Well, I would argue that he went through the transgender transition to get protections. That's the only way he can become a part of the protected class. And Obama giving him a pardon, or giving her a pardon, actually is a kind of a smack in the face to those who wanted him in the first place, or her in the first place.
At this level, for what he did, that wouldn't fly. Okay, if they thought he was still a threat, he'd never get out. Or he
already did his time. She already did her time.
Already did.
Or he would have never survived. Because at this level, when you play games at this level, basically you know that at any time your life is forfeit. So if you play the game, you play the game.
Exactly. When he didn't get pardoned by Obama because Obama was feeling good. Somebody who knew Obama, who had contacts with whoever Chelsea Manning was working for, is who tell Obama to do it. Obama did
Thank
it.
you. There you go.
This is not.
There you go.
Like, this is.
And the whole thing also is that if you don't want information out there, okay, just to kind of go back to the whole Podesta emails thing. I don't think John Podesta knew, right, that WikiLeaks had that shit, right? So what else is there out there that WikiLeaks has that we don't know about? And if I'm Julian Assange and I'm threatening to release more information about stuff, I don't know. You might be not so quick to try to do anything to me. In the event that you do, there might be some more damning shit to come out.
Bingo.
There's a thing called, look, it's not that Podesta didn't know. Podesta, in his position, had to know that these things are out there. But he was just looking at his people that they were going to protect him as something comes out. These people are always looking at you. They come out and say to you, do you have anything that we have to be aware of? And if you say yes, they'll say, okay, we'll take care of it. Or we're going to throw you under the bus.
Or is there anybody that's unsanctioned, that's not under our control, that has this information?
Exactly.
Because they're not worried about the people that are already under the control. Worry about the wild card, the journalist that doesn't give a shit, or the journalist that's innocent, or journalists that want to make a name, or somebody that's online someplace that wants to make a name and releasing something that you don't want them to find out. Because information, if you follow this stuff long enough, and you guys know this, all you need is a thread. Because if you get one bit of information that came out of the blue, it leads to the next breadcrumb and the next breadcrumb and the next breadcrumb till the whole thing comes to unravel. Right, Mike?
Yes.
That's the way it works. So it doesn't take much. It might look like, because you guys been doing this for a year. What you find might look like it's insignificant, right? A little piece of information that here or there that's insignificant, and all of a sudden another piece shows up, and then it becomes a line and a thread, and all of a sudden everything starts unraveling, right?
I don't think any bits of information are insignificant. I'll be quite honest. That's why we touched on the Ecuador piece. We spoke on the motivations as to why this happened. Yeah. The whole IMF loan that came into it. We're trying to paint a broad picture. Right. So I'm not excusing any possibility or any bit of information that might actually give us a fuller picture.
Well, the thing is, Ecuador for Ecuador to give him up, and that was we were wondering, why would Ecuador give him up? And
because they're pretty right wing now.
Well, no,
we just talked about
no, they threw them a hell of a bone, man. They were $10 billion in debt. They threw him a $4.2 billion bone. Okay, that's enough to give this dude up.
Yeah, we covered that. Yeah, we covered the motivation for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is that's not going into the president's pockets. That's going into the state itself. Once you take money from the IMF, you pretty much indebted yourself to that institution.
Not really, not in Ecuador.
Not
goes to the people who run the country, not the you understand that there's I don't know if you've heard of Carlos Slim. There's a guy in Mexico called Carlos Slim that many people know. That guy's got his pocket. He decides who is the president of Mexico.
Carlos Slim, yes, I'm very familiar. I'm very familiar with Carlos Slim. Most people have no clue who he is. Complex, you should know who he is.
He's one of the richest men in the world. Of course, people should know who he is.
That.
And
most people, but he's not like he's not famous. Carlos Slim's one of the richest men in the world.
Senor Slim is the Mexican telecommunications mogul. He basically owns telecom in Mexico.
Correct. But if you ask the average American person about any person who's not in the United States of America, they don't know, because Americans are very insular. So to say,
and they don't even know that he's not even actually Mexican. He's actually Iranian.
Hello. Exactly my point. Ulysses, thank you.
Go ahead, BGS. You have anything else you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, one saying it was obvious, because the first thing when I heard about it, I said, okay, what did they give Ecuador to give this dude up after 5 years? Because he's a piece. Basically, at this level, he's they didn't owe Julian Assange anything. He's a valuable piece they were holding on to. Okay, they held on to 5 years. It paid off. They got 4.2 billion out of it.
And we were,
country.
yeah, we were kind of just kicking around the idea that maybe, you know, the Russians might trade Snowden for, you know, getting NATO off their border, but we know that's not going to happen.
No,
because you know when when Bush said we won't move, NATO won't move 1 inch to the east, you know, that turned out to be a lie. So we know you can't trust, you know, these guys, you know.
Well, at some well, the difference between a Julian Assange to Ecuador and a Snowden to Russia is, yeah, you could give him up, you could trade him for something, but the thing is, then the next dude that's feeding you information or could potentially feed you information, he's not gonna budge.
Exactly. You might want this army, you might want this Navy admiral, you know. And he said, "What you do with Snowden? What are you gonna do with me?
Yeah, you're gonna do to me what you did to Snowden."
But see, the point that I keep trying to make, and you know, you're kind of making my point for me. It's not about these gentlemen, all right. It's about the information that they have, all right, and they don't know specifically where the information is. As Mike said, it's in cold storage and it's offline. They don't know where it is. A lot of this information may not even pertain to geopolitics at all. It could be wide-ranging sectors and areas, but it's a case of where is it. They don't. It's so sensitive to their interests, to their global interests. They don't want it out. Period. The only way to control that is to know where it is. That's why I keep saying it's not necessarily about Snowden or Assange. It's about where the information is. It's bigger than them.
Let me
keep saying this whole theater, even with the 4.2 billion, it's all public consumption. It's a part of the game.
It's called revenge, but it's an example. They're making an example out of him. But let me ask you a question. Okay, sure. You're part of WikiLeaks, part of the hierarchy, right?
Theoretically speaking, for people listening to this, Paul Bryant is not a part of WikiLeaks.
Oh no, he's not. He's not. This is a for instance. This is for instance.
I have mostly left the U.S. Well, actually, now I physically left the U.S. matrix. I've left the country now.
He just so happened to leave too.
No. This is I'm actually. This is just a theoretical example, right?
I know.
In other words, say that you're in the hierarchy of WikiLeaks, and basically Julian Assange may or may not know the deep information, right? He's a public face, which I wouldn't trust a public face with knowing all the stuff that I have because of an example just like this. And say your boy had a potential of being snatched. Say he had to run into the Ecuadorian consulate, and at any time something could happen. Ecuador could give him up, or the UK could rush in and pull him out, or something like that, because he's compromised. Okay, all your information, all your cold storage, what would you do with it?
As I said, from day one, it's in cold storage, so it's not about Assange. I've said that.
I understand.
It's never been about Assange, but you know, it's about. They don't know the full extent of what he has, and where is it? That's the larger concern.
I know. I understand. But it's been what, 5-6 years that he's been in there.
Okay.
If they snatch one of your principal guys, and he had a potential compromising information and the locations of the places that the stuff was at, and you had 5 years to do something, what would you do?
What would I do personally? I personally, just me, I would keep moving it around. Again, that's the way I think.
Exactly. So if you think it, and that's perfectly logical, don't you think they've done it already?
They are specifically they who?
Who's they?
The people that are in charge of WikiLeaks, the hierarchy. Don't you think they, as a human being, logical human being, don't you think they would have moved their operation and moved the information?
The nature, the very structure of WikiLeaks is decentralized.
I know. What I'm saying
I would even posit to say that it's probably moved on to the blockchain as well. There's probably various venues. That's what I'm saying. I mean, he's already put the command in. So okay, you're going to go hunt down cold storage? You want to go hunt down somebody's personal servers? You want to go hunt down blockchain too?
It's already moved. He does.
This is what I'm saying. So on the command, in the event that they apprehended me, which he already this was some years back, where he was in the event that he does get apprehended.
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be commands put in place to have more information released.
Yeah. So basically, he basically at this point there's nothing they can get out of him.
Him physically?
No.
No. But it's the information that they do not, that they, now when I say they, the deep state, the dark state, the wealthy elite, those individuals do not know the physical location of the information that is in cold storage that WikiLeaks
because again,
has.
I don't think John Podesta knew that WikiLeaks had all that on him.
No, if he couldn't change his, if he couldn't make it a complex password, then there's no way in the world he knew anything else. I mean,
of course
a guy who uses, a guy who uses password for password,
Hell, we still don't know what's on half of Hillary, well, with the 90% of Hillary Clinton's emails.
Well, you know what?
Oh, yes, we do.
No, we don't.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, no, we don't.
Oh, yes, we do.
All due respect.
I'm talking about the public.
One at a time.
I'm talking about the public doesn't know.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I really don't think that that's even of any actual relevance or consequence beyond, you know what, just talking just to talk. But you know what, we shall agree to disagree, because for me personally, that's just more public consumption.
That thing has consequences.
His names.
Great consequences. Suppose it came out that the U.S. or some ally, don't quote me, had somebody shoot down Malaysian Airlines over Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? How, if one of the guys on the other side, if they can, his cover is blown.
DE, I'll shoot you back this. In my travels, I came across an individual who made a claim that on Pan Am Flight 109 over Lockerbie, Scotland, that was shot down in '89, there were 2 CIA field agents who were coming back to the U.S. to speak to the press about false flag operations that they had been running across Europe.
Yeah, I heard that.
Some of which were against our allies.
I heard that.
It didn't have anything to do with that. Nothing at all. Zero.
I'm sorry?
Zero. Gaddafi, the people that they charged with it didn't have anything. Not Gaddafi.
Well, yeah, he's not saying that they did. He's saying that he can easily pinpoint the reason for the shoot down with those CIA agents on it. He's not saying that Gaddafi had anything to do with it. They just blamed Gaddafi. And they extracted billions of dollars out of Gaddafi for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly my point. Thank you, Mike. Exactly my point.
Yeah.
That in and of itself was a U.S. false flag operation, and all those hundreds of people were killed just to kill 2 CIA agents who were about to expose U.S. false flag operations, some of which were against U.S. allies.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
We'll never know.
Also, don't forget that the 2 FBI agents who interviewed the Boston Marathon bombers also mysteriously died as well.
Mm-hmm.
One died in a helicopter accident, and the other died in some kind of ski accident.
There's a long history of this kind of stuff going all the way back as far as you can trace human history.
Funny you say that, because I prior to moving back to New York, I lived in Jersey for 5.5 years, and the Boston bomber, his family was quietly relocated to the town in Jersey where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right on the shore of the Hudson River, and you would never know it.
Yeah, his aunt had a YouTube channel, and they took her YouTube channel down when she started revealing information about the older brother working for CIA. Because the Russians, the FSB, kicked this guy out from Moscow and said to the CIA, "Stop sending your guys over here."
You know, when I try to tell you American citizens that the U.S. government conducts false flag operations against its own citizens, people look at me as if I'm crazy. However, history is replete with histories. Governments will kill their own citizens under the name of maintaining control and power.
No kidding. we're black, man. We know that. Okay, we're black.
And Paul, a lot of times these things are not done directly by the government. It's like you're the Secretary of State. Suppose you're the Secretary of State, or let's say I am the Secretary of State, because you know I'm the Secretary of State, and something comes out about one of my handlers. It can't get out, so I have to make the decision that of what to do. And if the quickest way to act is to take out the whole house, and then we worry about collateral damage later, then that's what I do.
Yeah, that's pretty sloppy.
Well, I'm just giving an example. It's not sloppy, but I send in a cleaning crew. They clean up the thing. My boss pats me on the back and say, "Good job."
Well, how about an independent presidential candidate called Paul Wellstone that goes down in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, come on, man, it goes on all the time.
Yep.
Listen, sloppy works. Listen, BGS, you made the claim that that's sloppy, but understand something. But understand something. For the masses, sloppy works best. Precise and surgical looks military. Sloppy doesn't.
Okay.
So they want sloppy.
And that's why I brought up the Boston. That's why I brought up the Boston bombing, because that was a very sloppy operation.
Sloppy.
I was in Boston. I was not too far away from when this happened, and I had to evacuate people through text messages and emails.
A lot of times, sloppy is just sloppy. And the people that do sloppy work, they get reprimanded behind the scenes because it is sloppy. It's better for a dude to die of a heart attack in his hotel at 25 than you take out 100 people.
They wanted to blame. They wanted to blame the Boston Marathon bombing on the Russians because those guys were Chechen.
There you go. That's why
they wanted to set it off.
There are times when
do you want a targeted killing, or do you want like mass killing or targeted killing?
Exactly.
Right, mass killings or things of a mass nature are gonna look messy. Targeted needs to be precise.
Case in point, Cuba. Okay, directed energy weapons were used against Cuban officials. That was surgical. When you see the casino shooting, that has false flag military operation written all over it. Boston bombing has sloppy written all over it. Sloppy on purpose.
And Blackwater was.
I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Blackwater did the security arrangement for the Boston Marathon bombing at the time.
When you leave a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
When you leave a lot of hats on the ground, it looks as if it was sloppy and random and one person acting on his own. But that is a strategic operation. The goal is when you leave a lot of hats on the ground, it doesn't look military.
Well, the thing is, okay, if what I'm saying is when I say sloppy, you wouldn't take out 100 people to get one. Unless he's a high official and he happens to be on the plane, it's the only place you're going to get him. But
thinking purely militarily, yes, that's the way a soldier thinks. But you have to remember, intelligence does not think the way the military does.
Yes, they do.
No, they do not.
Yes, they do.
No, they do not.
Yes, they do.
What's the substance?
In other words, if say I wanted to get one person and do it quietly.
That's the thing. Did you hear what you just said? If I want it done quietly, sometimes it makes more sense to do it loudly. So when you want to do it loudly, that's also the hallmark of a false flag operation. You do it loudly, and then you can blame it on someone else. That is the textbook definition of a false flag operation.
But you can blame it on somebody else, but it takes a hell of a lot more work to do it because there's two when you do something like that, it causes too many loose ends. So to get one person is not necessary. If you're trying to cause an event, that's different. That's an event.
You know, it's interesting. It's interesting that Paul brings up, you know, those the Cuban officials, or I'm not sure who brought up the Cuban officials being.
That was Paul.
I did.
Oh yeah, because in 1989 they were talking about the Latin American invasion by the United States, and a lot of the victims were reporting these red lights being shined upon them and burning their skin. And, and the doctors are saying that they had never seen anything like that before.
Exactly. Now I know that the U.S. military started. The U.S. military developed weapons in the early '80s. I want to say '83 to '84. Directed energy weapons. All right. They also simultaneously were working on weapons that used low frequency sound waves, lower than bass and more powerful. They were used to destroy tanks, destroy vehicles, destroy aircraft.
In the 70s,
The unintended side effect was it literally would eviscerate human tissue. So they claimed they stopped work on it, but that work was never stopped. It was moved over into the black budget and it was refined. Okay, so sometimes go ahead, Complex.
I was just going to say, and now we call it 5G, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, you know, you say when you want an event, sometimes you do want an event. Okay, sometimes you absolutely want
Pearl Harbor.
Hello.
Yeah.
USS Liberty.
USS Liberty. Boston Tea Party.
USS Pueblo.
No, okay. Boston Tea Party. How far you want to go back?
Absolutely. Listen, the false flag operation has literally been around for hundreds of years.
Thousands of years. Thousands.
You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right.
Go back to Rome. Thousands of years.
Some would say bribe. Some would say the Trojan horse. But the point is, you do not always want clean and surgical. Sometimes you want loud and messy. Okay? It all depends on the goals wanted.
Exactly.
So when you have loud and messy, killing 100 people or killing 300 people when you really only want 2, no one even formed the thought to think that was anything other than a bunch of sloppy terrorists. That was a false flag operation.
Well, you're gonna bring attention to those. If you kill 100 people, kill one person, he dies in his sleep. Yeah, maybe. You kill 100 people, people are gonna look.
No, you know what? No, you're wrong. They won't. Maybe individuals like yourself, myself, the individuals here on this panel, the masses will not look. They're sheep. They believe what they're told. They want to be patted on the head and think the world works a certain way. And if 320 people die, then you know what? It was Libya, or it was Iran, or it was ISIL or ISIS, or any other term that you want to use. But thinking individuals like us, who are the minority, who are the minority, will look deeper and say, you know what, this bears every hallmark of a false flag operation.
Well, so, don't forget that they were doing training with that Green Beret who died in Niger, the brother that died. They were doing training on the event or the idea that there's a terrorist attack from Africa and they have to invade Africa. A 9/11 style attack.
Yeah, you could as soon as you saw the name, what was it? It was about ISIS in Africa. The name was so silly. I said, how they could have thought of a better name of the doggone thing. I forget the name of the doggone thing. Huh? No. It was ISIS. Something. The name was so silly.
Oh, ISIS of West Africa.
Yeah, I forget what it was called, but yeah,
the Islamic State of West Africa.
What's that?
They have rebranded Boko Haram to the Islamic State of West Africa as a way to engage military, U.S. military engagement.
So in other words, basically, where any place ISIS goes, we have the we're going to actually sell it to the public to actually go there. It's basically it's a what is it, advertising campaign to actually get money to actually go into Africa, because now we're going to pivot from the Middle East, which is already gone to some place we actually need to go, which is Western Africa. And why
that whole Coney, that whole Coney 2012 thing was, that's what that was supposed to be until it got exposed for the sham that it was.
They've been trying to sell this stuff, war in Africa, for the last 20 years, man. It hasn't flown anywhere.
Which is funny.
Yeah, they made too much. They were so successful in making Africa look like this place that nobody wants to go. That's why American people don't want to believe in that foolishness.
Well, it's funny you make mention of ISIS and ISIL because, they are the remnants of ultimately they are the remnants of the Mujahideen, which was created by damn, now I don't want to think of his damn name.
Brzezinski?
No, well, yes.
Osama bin Laden.
Thank you. They were created by
hey,
Osama
this is the name.
bin Laden,
This is the name of it. ISWAP.
Hold on. They were created.
I mean, if you go, I don't know who thought of that, but they should be shot.
Well,
really if you're gonna advertise for something, come on, man. ISWAP.
Well,
so we're gonna have a Compton ISWAP or a New York ISWAP where all the Chinese have to come together and sell goods. Okay, come to ISWAP. It's the Islamic version of Chinese swap meet. Come on, man.
Yeah, falafel and ice cream for everybody.
Yeah.
The CIA had Operation Ortsac, which is Castro spelled backwards. But ISIS and ISIL, they come directly from the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen was created by Osama bin Laden, trained and funded by the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the green berets were on the ground arming them and training them, which is the only purpose that the Green Beret exists, to train, arm, equip militia on the ground.
They even made a Rambo movie about it.
Most people didn't understand why he was in Afghanistan, but which also goes back to no, they didn't. No, they didn't. Thinking people did. The majority of people in this country had no idea why he was there. If you tell the average, in fact, not even average, if you tell most American people who the Mujahideen was, they have no clue who you're talking about.
Now 30 years later they don't, but back then everybody knew.
I strongly disagree with you.
They made it. They had a popular movie out of there, blockbuster movie about it. Everybody knew who the Mujahideen is, to push the Russians out. That's what it was there for. In fact, the big old, go back and look at, was it Rambo 3? There's a Rambo 2, Rambo 3, where he's actually fighting with the Mujahideen. After the end of that movie, you don't know who the Mujahideen is, then you need to be buried underneath a rock, because everybody.
Which is exactly my point. Most people did not know. People who were thinking, who were the minority of this country. Most people in this country, they had no clue. No clue.
Red Dawn was another movie.
Yes, it was. Listen, there were several movies. Even listen, we can circle this barn all night, from the Mujahideen to the U.S. invading Kuwait and Iraq for oil, for Europe and the American oil companies, because America only gets 8% of our oil from the Arab countries. It goes on and on and on and on. People only focus and repeat what they hear in the mainstream media. They don't understand. When we were in the Gulf in 1990 and 91 and 92, back then, America was getting 46% of its oil from Venezuela. Back then, 8% of our oil from that region. Okay, people do not understand what's going on. They just don't. So you know what? You always have to keep in mind, people who are free thinkers, people who do independent research, people who connect the dots. We're in the vast minority, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, but certain. Okay, being an adult at the time, that the Mujahideen was in Afghanistan. They have to sell it. So there's a big marketing campaign about the so-called Afghan rebels pushing the Russians out and the Mujahideen. Everybody knew because they had to sell it. Just like everybody knows what WMD is. Because they had to sell it, so they sold it. They sold that broad and wide, far and wide. Everybody back then that was alive, that was an adult, knew who the Mujahideen is.
I think BGS is giving Americans
way too much credit.
No. What I'm saying, I'm serious because I'm old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember because I was in my 20s in the 1980s, they sold this. They actually made a movie about how this dude, this I think it was a congressman, actually sold this idea because you had to sell it. Because most people didn't know where the fuck Afghan was. They thought it was a rug but they sold this idea of pushing the Russians out of Afghanistan, and they had to sell it. So they sold this every night on the news, every commercial. They made movies about it. Made more than one movie about it. Everybody knew who they were because they sold the idea. They might not know exactly why they wanted to push the Russians out, but they knew who the Mujahideen were and why they were fighting. Everybody knew.
Hey, the name of that guy, who's that guy who was Secretary of State for Bush 1?
Secretary of State, James Baker.
James Baker.
Him and
No, there was basically they made a movie about this dude. He was a congressman that actually sold this idea of pushing the Russians out of Afghanistan. They actually made a movie about it. This one guy. It was called Somebody's War. I can't remember the next name of it, but it's called Somebody's War, where this dude went on a campaign and sold this idea all the way up to the top of pushing the Russians out of Afghanistan.
Yeah,
he started in the 70s.
But they were on the news every night. I mean, you would see every night they were on the news talking about how the Russians are doing this in Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, yeah.
And they were saying, you were trying to persuade everybody that we got to send in weapons.
We got to send in weapons and support freedom.
I mean,
these are Afghan, because they used to call the Mujahideen the Afghan freedom fighters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every look at JFK. Morning, noon, and night, you'll see these 747s taking off loaded with weapons.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that was open. I mean, it's out there in the open. Nobody was hiding.
Mm-hmm. No, nobody was hiding. They had to sell it. Yeah. It's like they sold they sold the war against the first Persian Gulf War against Iraq. Because they've actually made a movie called the Tail Wags the Dog, right? I think that was the name of the movie.
No, you're thinking about the movie called Wag the Dog, about invading Canada, which really was an illusion about Clinton invading Kosovo, I believe, to take attention away from his Monica Lewinsky thing.
So what I'm saying is, remember them talking about this chick that came to Congress, talking about how the Iraqis were actually throwing babies out of the incubators and stuff like that.
Yeah, she lied.
Of course, she lied. So she lied, but the thing is, that's how they sold the war.
Yeah.
Right.
So false flags have been around as far as as long as human beings have been around.
She was the princess of the Kuwaiti ambassador, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, her daughter.
It actually came out of a U.S. law firm. A U.S. law firm came up with that plan.
Mm-hmm.
To Congress.
So this is not the first time.
Oh.
What I'm saying is this was a long game, and back then we said, well, why are they so concerned about because they actually showed that was one of the famous clips, April Glaspie saying it was okay for Iraq to actually attack Kuwait over the slant drilling they were actually doing. They actually gave the U.S. actually gave the okay and then turn around and attack them. That's public knowledge. And then they had to sell the war. They sold the war to have to go after Iraq. But we didn't know exactly. So why are you going after Iraq? because you just used them to actually go after Iran in the first place, because you did that in the 70s. You actually used Iraq to actually attack Iran and sell that war, and then come back and then try actually go against your own allies that you just used.
Well, I have a group.
We didn't know what the long game was. We know what the long game is now, but we didn't know what it was then.
Well, the movie Three Kings deals with that one.
Yeah, it does partially.
About them stealing money out of
yeah. There's an exchange that takes place between I can't remember the dude's name who played he was like an Iraqi soldier, a general or something, and Donnie Wahlberg and Ice Cube.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember the movie.
The project for the New American Century, they laid out the roadmap for country by country by country systematically that the U.S. would send troops to with ongoing, never-ending military operations. And just like a stack of dominoes, the United States has gone into every country: Iraq, Iran, Syria, Kuwait, Qatar, Libya. You name it, one by one by one.
Yeah, The PNAC document didn't come out until like 1998 and wasn't public known until 2003.
Correct. It wasn't publicly known.
But that was well after the first Persian Gulf War in 1990. That was well after that.
Correct. However, Wolfowitz and the individuals who were pulling his strings, gentlemen like Dick Cheney, gentlemen like Donald Rumsfeld, gentlemen like Carl Rhodes, gentlemen like Al Haig and Brzezinski, and
which probably
Kissinger.
Bush
have been planning that since the 60s.
I don't know about that.
Absolutely.
Not well. Okay. The PNAC document. The PNAC document is actually connected to more connected to Quigley. But the thing is, the PNAC document originally wasn't valid until after 1997, when actually after 1995. When Russia and China, when Russia actually bailed out, China actually bailed out Russia. That's when the PNAC, that PNAC doctrine actually was valid. Before that, it wasn't valid because Russia was already on its knees. There was no need to do it.
Right. They thought Russia would never recover. They thought what they had done to Russia would never recover from it. That Russia would have to come to their side begging. And that's what
But if you look back at the gentlemen who have been in the deepest halls of Washington since the 60s, going all the way back to the 1960s,
that would be Kissinger.
They have not only Kissinger. I just named 6 different names, not only Kissinger. If you look at these gentlemen going all the way back to the late 60s, they have been following consistently a roadmap of interest in that region of the world for decades. One thing about these gentlemen, they look long term. And they have long memories, and they never stop.
Well, even though they
see the roadblocks,
even though their game is already lost. But the thing is that we now know what the game was for, which is something Carroll Quigley warned them against it before he died in one of his last interviews, and I think it was 1975, 1976. He said, "What?" They asked him, "Why did you?" In fact, I played the clip. They said, "Why did you write the book and call it Tragedy and Hope?" He said he had hoped that writing the book would actually extend what he meant is white Western power, actually extend it. And he said it was a tragedy that it's going to go down the tubes. He thought it was a tragedy was going to actually go down the tubes. And he said, and in 1976, he said, we're all but finished now. He said that 40 years before it actually happened. And basically, I used this work to actually document exactly why he said it. They've been trying for 40 or 50 years to actually prove him wrong. and we're
Well, I think that it's.
here we stand.
Well, I was going to say, the interesting thing that the kind of back up what Paul is saying, because when you look at the cabinet that, or the board, or the advisors that Hillary Clinton was putting together for a 2016 run, lo and behold, guess who it was? It was going to be all the neocons from Bush 2 era. Gulf War, Afghanistan, the guys who got all that stuff sparked off. They were going to be the guys that were going to be, advisors to Hillary Clinton. I'm trying to remember the some of the key names. It wasn't like Rumsfeld and those guys, but some of the younger ones who are still active, if you will.
Yeah,
So him and a few others. They were going to go full. They were going to go full. She was going to basically be going full neocon.
But you have if white Western power is to be saved, they would have to go full neocon if they can, because that's the only way they actually have it done. Because all the indicators point downward to them. They only have. I keep telling you guys. I told you guys when you guys first started.
The point that I'm making, I'm not arguing against you. The point I'm making is to support what Paul was saying, in that these guys were their objectives were long reaching, even to the point where they would merge up in 2016 with neoliberals to form this neoliberal con type of union. I'm just merely illustrating what Paul was talking about with regards to them having the long game objectives. That's all.
Well, basically, I don't even know why she would have trusted neocons, because the neocons actually, everything they've done is actually backfired.
But she was planning to go to Iran as well. They were like, look, let's get down.
Because
that's go ahead.
But complex. There's one thing that people don't pay attention to. There's an arm of the Republican Party that is just like one arm of the Democrat Party, and there's one arm of the Democrat Party that's just like one arm of the Republican Party. You guys,
of course.
Bro, they're all the same.
Whenever something happened, when they were on issues of funding, money going to the military or to military contractors, these two vote together.
Because they're all the same, okay? And that is
they call them Democrat or Republican, and people believe them, they're saying that the two are the same.
No, exactly. They're not all the same. They're not all the same. They're not all the same. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Why are they not the same, BGS?
Okay, they differ on a lot. They differ on a whole lot of stuff. But the thing is, when your interests align, then there's only a few answers. Okay, when your interests start aligning, then you actually get on board with somebody that you actually disagree with. They're not all the same.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
That's Republican assumption.
No. They're not all the same. They're not all the same.
That is Republican assumption.
They're not.
Behind closed doors.
They are not. They are not all the same.
Allow me.
If you read foreign affairs, you know that they're not all the same.
Okay, you got one Democrat and one Republican.
It has nothing to
work for the Koch brothers.
It has nothing to do with Republican or Democrats. Even on both sides, they're not all the same.
They are the same. There is a difference between public consumption and what is at the deepest levels of power and control. At the deepest levels of power and control, they are all the same. They take public roles for public consumption.
No, they're not.
In answer to their corporate puppet master.
If they were all the same, Iran would have been bombed already. If they were all the same.
Just allow me to finish.
Okay.
At the deepest levels of power and control, they are all the same.
They're not.
Now please just allow me the courtesy of completion. I will not speak over you.
We completed.
At the deepest levels of power and control, they are all the same. Now, as human nature, people will infight, and I see one thing one way, I see one thing your way, but they're all the same. They're one group. They all tend to move in one direction.
How?
There are. Allow me to finish, please.
I want you to clarify.
Consumption.
You said that 15 times. How?
Allow me to finish.
Okay.
For public consumption, there is a Democratic Party, there is a Republican Party. There are always things that are done for public consumption that pull to one way or to the other. But at the deepest levels of power and control, they are the same. There is no difference between Democrat or Republican. It is about
Wait a minute, Paul.
and control.
Are you saying that you have to give people the illusion of choice?
Thank you. Exactly. Exactly.
And you also have to point out that Jeb Bush was in Haiti siphoning resources from the Haitians, just like the Clinton Foundation was with Tony Rodham.
Correct.
And what I'm saying is the deepest levels, they disagree. They're not all the same. Now,
you mean you're referring to ideological differences?
I'm talking ideological difference. You have what they call you do have Fabian socialists, which is the correct term,
right?
And you have what they call laissez-faire liberals, which is the other correct term. Okay, and they differ. They do differ. They differ in ideology.
On that,
but wouldn't that be required? Right, because you would have to create different types of political personages, different types of political philosophies to assuage the myriad of political angles that people take in terms of individuals.
No.
Why is what is explain like this new progressive left wing that's largely comprised of millennials, right? That's a certain block, right? And that certain block has a certain ideology.
A complex.
Those are called Fabian socialists, which is doing it by literally slowly but surely.
And what I'm saying is that is something that is necessary. That is something that is necessary to assuage a certain segment of the population, and then you're going to need an opposing view to assuage a certain segment of the population. Then you'll need an alternate view to assuage a certain section of the population. But at the end of the day, the end goals are all the same.
No. In other words,
correct.
Hold on.
In that regard,
hold on. He asked me a question. Okay, you basically if you look at government, or you look at your managers, which I call them managers of society. Okay, they have to change according to what? They have to change according to not only the culture but also the environment that they're surrounded by. Right? You cannot have the same policy in a different environment. It's not going to work. Okay,
of course not.
And so you have two wings about how to do things. Okay, they differ. Okay, in other words, the Fabian socialists say, okay, this is the environment that we're in. Okay, we have technology. We maybe have too many people that don't have jobs. We have a sort of a capitalist structure is collapsing. Okay, how do we go about it? Okay, and you might have, say, like the laissez-faire liberals say, actually borrow more, push it to the corporations, liberally, basically
Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal is actually progressive. Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. So progressivism is a part of what we're discussing here.
No. In other words, damn the little people. Give it to the big corporations, let them do what they do, and then let the little people sort it out. Okay. Whereas the Fabian socialists said, no, that's not exactly the way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to give the people, like, say, the universal basic income. Okay, we're actually going to liberalize people being able to use technology. We're actually going to retrain the workforce. We're actually retrain the children. It's going to cost a hell of a lot more money. But at the very end, if these people actually start destroying the system, it's not going to work. So you have two competing ideas. They don't all think the same, and that's how come they put these ideas against each other. And sometimes,
right. But the ultimate end game is for capital to flow to our corporate infrastructure.
No, the the ultimate goal of any manager in society is to have a stable society.
Okay.
Because if you do not have a stable society, then what you're doing as far as capital is concerned, the system will not exist. You cannot have profits, you can't have capital without a society. All these things are instruments within a society.
The ultimate goal they want is a controlled society. That's what they all agree on. They want a controlled society. I understand what you're saying from a capitalist point of view, from a business point of view, but ultimately, these individuals want a controlled society. That's why this country is a very uneducated, very insular, somewhat even isolationist society, because the powers that be want a controlled society, and ultimately it's about having a controlled society. So for public consumption, left wing, right wing, Democrat, Republican, they are the same, because that on a public level, for public consumption, they look different. Behind closed doors, in the true halls of power, they're the same, because all the Republican politicians and all the Democratic populations, they're all puppets to the corporate oligarchs who control this country.
And Paul, let me just say this too. I mean, I think a controlled population is necessary to completely automate everything. You need that.
It's funny. Let's look at one quick example. Venezuela. The Koch brothers have a vested interest in what's going on in Venezuela, because Venezuela does not have crude oil. Venezuela has a form of bitumen. The Koch brothers refinery can only process bitumen. Therefore, the Koch brothers need the bitumen in Venezuela to keep their refinery running, to maintain their billions. Because what are the Koch brothers? They are part of the American corporate oligarchy. Oligarchy. Perfect example. It's about power and control. Now, how you publicly sell that to the people, personally, does not interest me. I do not care what the puppet does. My interests lay in the puppet masters.
When you do it, when you talk about something like Venezuela, and we talked about it a year and a half ago. You have to look at number one, the current situation, but also the history. Not only financially, but also militarily. The Monroe Doctrine is still in place. It never left, and that's been going on since 1823, before the Koch brothers ever even thought of.
We talk about that every time we discuss geopolitics. The Monroe Doctrine, the Manifest Destiny, all of it.
Or Mackinnon's theory, which is the Earth Island, that's going on with Belt and Road as far as China is concerned. There's a lot of things. In other words, the Monroe Doctrine is still in place. So basically, even if the Koch brothers wanted to back off, you still have generals that say, wait a minute, strategically, you cannot allow this. Or the
Koch brothers can't back off. If the Koch brothers back off, they would have to get their bitumen from the tar sands up in Canada, which is going to cost them 10 times the amount. So to even say if the Koch brothers want to back off, that is literally cannot or will not ever happen, because they would literally put themselves out of business.
Even if the Koch brothers didn't exist, even if they didn't exist, you would still have the same problem with Venezuela. Even if they didn't exist.
Right, which has always been.
So that would mean that it wouldn't be a Koch brothers that had an oil refinery; it'd just be somebody other than them. That kind of negates the point.
Even if they didn't have oil, it would still be an issue.
Right. The thing is my backyard. You want
my backyard.
Right. Well,
want to control the
I'm
neighborhood.
clear on that.
Exactly. D is the military guy. You know what I'm talking about, D, right?
you got to control your neighborhood. If you
control
don't
your neighborhood.
I'm clear on that.
Nobody's going to respect you.
So exactly, and that's basically this is what basically this is really what's going on in Venezuela is really not what it is at this point. It's not about oil. It's not about oil. It's about everybody else, because the thing is, like D was saying, if we don't win this or we don't figure this out, nobody in the world is going to respect us. So it'll actually influence every place else we do business.
We have
but resources are typically the impetus on why you're going to go rummaging in someone else's backyard to begin with. Well, in this instance, I do believe it is the case because. Oh, really? Okay. Well, I think that we brought up the Venezuelan reserves as key strategic assets that need to be secured, that the United States finds of high value. So are we going to completely negate that and throw that off the table? I hope we're not. I hope we're not.
I give you one example. It's called the Falkland Islands.
I get that. But what I'm saying, are we going to negate the large deposits? Okay, this is all I'm saying. It's part and parcel.
I know, but the thing, like D was saying, that is not at this point. That's not the issue anymore. It's not about the Venezuela or there was about everything else. Your whole structure.
Let's go back to Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Guatemala, Honduras. You know, bananas.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this whole thing started. They built a railroad.
Didn't we just do it? So we said that ultimately that this all renders down to corporate interests. Okay, so split it up. If it's not oil, it's going to be if it's not oil, it's going to be ag. If it's not ag, it's going to be whatever. There's resources. You don't go there just simply because it's just there. You're going to go there because there's something to exploit.
No, the base. Okay. This is how it works.
Whether this is how it works. Brothers or U.S. fruit, power and control.
This is how it works. Okay, this is how it works. This basically this. If you want to have to be the leader of the world as far as the financial architect, you need four things, right? Manufacturing base, gold, balance of payments, and military, right? Blue water navy military, right? You have to be able to prove that you can protect your interests. You have to be proved that in case anybody's going to cross you or go sideways, they're going to pay a penalty.
And those interests are what?
Huh? Or it could be anything. It could be strategic. You doing business with somebody we don't like. It could be something you didn't repay alone.
So capital. So he would be a capital resource, perhaps something like that.
He'd be an example. Basically, if you're the cop,
a resource.
If you're the cop and you're the bully on the block, right? And say another country was in fact they've actually said this before as far as military U.S. picking on a small guy, right? Say another country like Nigeria doesn't want to do business with you. And so because they're not afraid of you anymore, you pick some little country, punch them in the nose, give them a bloody nose, and say, or some little country in Africa, punch them in the nose, give them a bloody nose, say you're next.
Right, say, look at
why did you do that?
Panama, you have a good example there. You know how many presidents of Panama died because they wanted to take the canal back from the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
It's the U.S. says, look, the canal, we control it. If we don't control it, this idiot that we leave there can make our ship go all the way around South America. You can't have that.
Look, at the end of the day, the world...
Build their own canal.
Well, I was going to say, at the end of the day, the world is a business. Okay, what are canals for? Those are channels for passing goods and all types of things from one area into another. Right, it's to facilitate trade.
How do you protect your business?
Exactly. You're not looking at
protecting your business is actually a cost of doing business, which ultimately falls under the line of
how do you protect your business?
Well, bang, a gun, BGS.
Oh, exactly. What is the biggest gun in the world?
The United States.
Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah. So basically, so why do you arrest somebody and make an example of them.
That's not. I'm not questioning why you would do these things. What I'm saying is that it is all done in the pursuit of resource acquisition.
Yeah.
How else do you plan on controlling the world? How else do you plan on controlling the world?
Or maintaining power.
You remember Venezuela, bro?
That's a resource.
Okay. All right. It's a resource. All right. All right.
Venezuela don't have any resources. Reagan sent 25,000 troops down there. One buddy of mine went down there. He said, I don't know why we went there. He's in the army. He's a Green Beret. I don't know why we went there. We went there. I fired off a couple of shots and the war was over.
Yeah, we did that with Vietnam.
But it is in our backyard. It is in our backyard. And we have to show people, hey, look, no. You're not. No.
I'm telling you, this is how the generals think. That's what I said. Trump may be able to back them down or whatever, but the generals are not going to be happy about what's going on.
The generals are supposed to think like that because it's their job to think like that. And then the businessmen look at the resources that they would like to acquire once the military does its job.
Trump is as much a puppet as any U.S. president since LBJ. And anyone who thinks any different has not been paying attention.
The president is only like WikiLeaks, you know what I'm saying? Assange is a face.
He's a face. He is not the power. You
have multiple voices. You have multiple people. Have multiple interests speaking at the same time. Who does he listen to? If you look at Obama going against his own military to actually he did.
Well, many would argue right now that Trump is listening to Netanyahu, but that's
You know what? Listen, Trump will listen to whether the name is Trump, Obama, Bush 2, Bush 1, Reagan, Carter, Ford, Nixon, or LBJ. Mm-hmm. Every single American president, starting from LBJ, has been a puppet to the American corporate oligarchy. And anyone who thinks any differently has not done the research. They have not been paying attention. So while people entertain themselves with talk all day about Trump this and Obama that and Bush this and Clinton that, okay, they're all puppets. Presidents do not even listen to their generals. They take their marching orders from the corporate oligarchy.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they do. They listen to the generals.
Hey, but the corporate
military operations for specifics. Yes, only for that. But the president is not ultimately calling the strings. The corporate oligarchy ultimately calls the strings, not the president.
Not all the time. Not all the time.
All the time.
Not all the time.
We shall agree to disagree.
We shall do your homework. Not
all the time, but when they don't, they usually end up dead.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, just ask John F. Kennedy about that one. They don't.
He was an extreme case. He was an extreme case. He was in the same league, the same position where Abraham Lincoln was.
I'm sorry.
John F. Kennedy.
Okay, well, he's in the same position.
Well, Abraham Lincoln would wanted to make changes to the U.S. monetary system.
Well, that's part of it, but there's a simpler solution to why Abraham Lincoln got popped. Okay,
well, he interrupted a lot of people's money from the South.
No. He violated the Federalist Trust. In other words, he violated states' rights. He violated states' rights, and basically a lot of the states that believed in states' rights wasn't going to let that sit. So he had a lot of reasons to pop him. That was the biggest reason. That was the largest reasons why Abraham Lincoln would have got popped. He did something. He did a whole bunch of stuff. Ultimately he was right. Okay. He did a lot of the wrong things for the right reason. Ultimately, he was right. You needed a railroad to actually connect the rest of most of the United States. You needed that. And the only way to get that money without going into the debt was actually to get it from the South, which the South didn't agree with because it throws them into the Depression. So he actually said, if you succeed, we're coming down to get the goddamn money anyway, which he did. But things you violated the Articles of Confederation by saying states don't have a right to secede.
Personally, I largely agree with everything you just said, and I've been telling people that for 25 years, and they still look at me as if I'm crazy.
It was all about money.
Correct. It had nothing to do with slaves.
It wasn't about money. It was all about building a railroad. Because if you look in history, railroads were extremely expensive to build. Okay,
yeah, but railroads were only
a lot of labor, a lot of
materials.
materials.
It was about the country that railroads were the most.
I can't hear you guys. You guys talking at the same time.
One at a time, please.
They also wanted a country. Sorry. They didn't want any countries in between. They set out on the plan. You can see it from the Louisiana Purchase, Alaska. The United States set out on a plan that the whole continent was going to be theirs.
Of course, well, that's imperial conquest. But the thing is not that what you want, is how do you go about getting it? And
right.
And basically they're on board about getting it. But the thing is, once you have it, now you have this. You double the size of your country. Okay, how do you connect it? How do you connect it?
At that time, railroad was the
only way. And what right after the Civil War, what did they build?
Railroad.
Well, what was Lincoln before he was actually a lawyer? He was lawyer to whom? To what?
Lawyer.
To what?
The railroad.
The railroad. But the thing is, ultimately, he was correct about what he did, because that actually did facilitate bringing the two halves of the country together. You needed the railroad. The thing is, you have two ways of getting it. In fact, Russia did it with the Trans-Siberian Railroad. China did it. The Transcontinental Chinese Railroad, but it cost them a whole lot of peasants. It cost I think it cost Russia like 5 million peasants that died of starvation. I think it cost Chinese 6 million peasants that died of starvation. Okay, if you don't want to do that, you don't want to borrow the money from being beholden to European bankers. Where do you get the money? You get it from the South, which is in the form of tariffs. Which is why he quadrupled the amount of tariffs coming from the South that South Carolina didn't want to pay, because the last two rounds of tariffs actually sent the whole South into what?
I think BGS is breaking up.
I'm breaking up. Can't you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah. So basically, the only way him to get the money is from the South. South Carolina said, most of the southern states say, if you raise the tariffs again like this, we're going to secede. And Lincoln said, I'm coming down to get the money anyway, because I need it for this project. So that's what the Civil War was about. Yeah, but he violated basically the Articles of Confederation, where the states actually came together, which is still in debate right now. But nobody's going to talk about that because, like you said, we're sheep. We're not supposed to know that. It's about slaves, and it wasn't.
I'm seeing some articles come up now that the states are starting to do a lot of things that pushing back to get their states right. I'm seeing people talking about it, and it's getting more. They're getting more boisterous about it.
Oh yeah, because you're running out of money. So basically, what holds the United States together is money. And when you run out of money, you might not have the United States, which is something that they're afraid of. You won't have this system.
Yeah, but you see the thing.
Yeah, Long Island wants to succeed from New York.
well, hell, California wants to split up into three states, and some parts of California want to be their own country. Texas want to become its own country.
Thank you. You just took the words right out of my mouth. But you know what? If you look at if you study history, when capitalism starts to fail, then comes extreme capitalism, then comes socialism, then comes fascism. And we've seen how that turns out. And history is replete with examples of that.
You already have socialism. Socialism has been with you since the 1860s. You already have socialism.
Listen, I know this. I understand this. But people in this country, again, they repeat what they see on the news. So when people say socialism versus capitalism, no, that's apples versus oranges. You have to talk in this country socialism versus federalism. Capitalism is an economic system. It's not a system of governance. So I don't even give myself the headache of trying to explain the differences to most people.
No, what you're going to have if it breaks up to hold the country together, what you're going to have, which is fascism, which is authoritarianism.
Correct. Which is exactly what I just said. That's literally what I just said.
Which basically which basically you have to socialize people into it, and you haven't done that. It's been a liberal country for 300 years. It's not going to happen. The country will break up.
Well, you know what?
It will break up. As this system would happen if it runs out of money. Authoritarianism does come in. This country is too big to hold together through authoritarianism, especially with local people. It's not going to work.
I will say this. I go back to the words of Adam Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Smith said, "Capitalism can only work for 240 years. After 240 years, it will collapse and fail under its own weight."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you gotta look at what they said too. He said you gotta have a revolution every 100 years, otherwise the system's gonna fail.
If you look at what they're trying in France at the moment, which is authoritarianism, what's going on?
Falling apart.
Becoming yellow.
There's croissants are being burned in the street.
Yeah, it's called yellow vest. With a liberal society, authoritarianism will not work.
And they're losing their grip on Africa right now, where all their wealth is coming from.
Well, that is. I'm not even gonna delve into that, man. I'm not gonna even get my.
No, we can do that on your hangout on Saturday. We'll do that on your hangout on Saturday.
Man,
we'll
I don't even want to
politics in.
Basically, basically, at the end of the day, you can't stop the weight of history. It doesn't matter what they do. Even if they do something in Africa or they do something militarily, it'll give them 20 more years. Tops. You can't stop it.
I will say this though. Although he didn't live to see it, in a lot of ways, Hitler's Third Reich has come to fruition. We just don't call it the Third Reich. We call it the European Union, because Germany controls Europe through the might of the Deutschmark. We call it the euro. We call it the European Union. But Germany is the economic power in that side of the world.
Isn't Angela Merkel and Merkel isn't Merkel like his niece or something like that?
I don't know.
No, Hitler was not a Prussian.
I can't speak on that.
No, he wasn't a Prussian.
Merkel is
a German.
Merkel is a Russian. Yeah.
Huh?
She's a
no. Merkel's a Prussian.
Yeah, Prussian, but she's part of
Russian as well.
Prussian.
Yeah, because she grew up in East Germany. Yeah, she should speak Russian.
She's Prussian.
Well,
she was basically Putin was her handler in Russia. in East Germany. Yeah, she was. Look it up.
Okay.
If that's how he knows, that's how he knows she's afraid of dogs.
Afraid of dogs.
She said she's afraid of dogs. Yeah, that's how he knows. She had a report to Putin when she was in East Germany.
I think it was either Complex or DE had spoke about or asked a question about the former German Empire. That was modern day Germany, Switzerland, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Austria is the former German Empire.
The Prussian.
Yes, all of it.
The Habsburg Empire. Yeah. Yeah, but Germany wasn't formed Germany as a country wasn't formed in 1871.
That's what I said.
In Austria,
modern day. I made a distinction between modern day and the former German Empire.
It wasn't an empire.
Austria, Hungary.
Empire wasn't a German empire because it extended all the way into France and Spain. So
we're kind of splitting hairs now, but
they used to call it the Holy Roman Empire at first, and then
that was a long.
But empires.
Now we're going a long way back.
So was the Russian Empire that it extended itself and then collapsed back onto itself. So basically, those things don't go away. The connection's still there.
Exactly, which is why, which is why, funny how it came up. That's why Hitler, the first country he invaded was Poland. The point is not 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 to specifically get bogged down on one nation, but when these authoritarian and fascist leaders come to power, the first thing they want to do, the first thing that they claim publicly is, I want to reclaim what was taken from us. I want to reclaim what we lost. So, but to bring it back to what we before we started going down this particular rabbit hole, the economic long-term viability of capitalism as an economic system. If you look at all the what's the term I want to use? If you look at the architecture of it and the structure of it, it should have already failed. It's being artificially inflated and propped up everywhere you can possibly look at it. How much longer we have, I personally cannot put a figure on that. I don't know. To me, I see there are too many things in flux for me to say that it's going to fail. What I will say is this: the influence that the United States has definitely waned. That's definitely on the decline. The threat, the fear that nations had of the United States, that has definitely waned. To say that the American empire is crumbling, to me personally, that's a romantic notion. I can't say that yet. I don't see that yet. But the power and influence waned, definitely. However, now we see China. China has kindly created its own seat at the big table, and now India has kind of trying to nose its way up to the feeding trough as well. So we don't know. So
China's
it's going to be interesting to see how things play out over
China's at the head of
10, 20, 25 years.
What do you think is holding the United States together, in your opinion? What holds it together?
Oh, a lot of global mutual interests.
Like what?
A lot of global mutual interests.
No, I'm talking about local. I'm talking about domestically. What holds it together?
Domestically? Well, people are largely sheep. You have the economy, which is being propped up and inflated and supported in many ways.
So what happens when it can't be propped up anymore?
That's the $64,000 question.
No, you're going to have to answer I would say the next 10 years, you're going to have to answer that.
We might.
Maybe even sooner.
We might. Listen, I largely agree with your analysis. I just don't know.
Okay.
I don't disagree with your time frame. I just say I don't know whether it's 5, 10, 15, 22, 22, 25. I don't know. But
wait, what was the question? I stepped away for a second. What was the question?
How long? I asked him what holds it together, and how long do you think that these factors that hold it together will remain?
Before what, like chaos ensues or something?
Before the potential. I'm not going to say the collapse, the potential collapse of this particular system. And if the system collapses, what is going to happen to the United States as a physical body?
Well, collapses are always controlled.
But
not always. Not always.
No,
not always.
One thing, though.
The depression was not a controlled collapse.
But
wait, what was that?
The depression was not a controlled collapse.
No. What I'm saying is that you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Before, if there's anything, when I said, what's helping to keep America afloat, mutual global interests.
Okay, and that is
hold on. Economies globally are interlinked. So when one feels something, everyone feels something. So at this point, it is of mutual economic benefit for people to stay in power, to keep systems going. So for the U.S. to collapse, there are a lot of other global partners that stand to suffer, if not as much, close to as much. So when I look at that as well, I have to answer that. I don't know. I can't say that. I don't have the confidence that you have to say that America is just going to fail and collapse. I can't say that.
Oh, why do you think that the Chinese are building a parallel system as we speak, or actually have built it and actually trying to implement it?
But here's the thing about China, okay? Because China is economically tied at the hip with America. So even as much as America and China, which I feel are waging a Cold War, and I feel that America and China are waging a Cold War using proxy states, they're economically tied at the hip. But personally, I'm of the belief that China might be waging this Cold War because in as much as they're economically tied at the hip with the United States, they're also concurrently trying to free itself from being economically tied at the hip.
So how would you do it? How would you do it?
It's a case of I've economically tied myself at the hip to you, America, in order to create my own financial independence. So I don't have to be economically tied at the hip with you.
So in other words, what I just said, what they've been building for the last 10 years and what they're trying to implement right now, right? I just said it. They're trying to extract themselves from being tied to the United States and its systems.
That's my thinking. That's my personal thinking.
What I'm saying, they call it SIPS, which they're trying to replace the SWIFT. They call it the China Investment Bank. I forget what the acronym is. That replaces the IMF and the World Bank.
The AIIB.
The AIIB. Thank you. And basically what they really want to do, and you guys have been talking about this, is actually replace the whole banking system with cryptos and artificial intelligence. What they're trying to do now.
That's where I was going to go. I mean, okay, let's follow the technology trends to get an idea or a view of what the future looks like. Okay, it's heavily automated and AI driven. So I don't see a collapse in much the way that that's why I was like, okay, well, that was the Great Depression. I mean, we're in a fourth industrial based time frame, so I'm going to look at things based on that. Right?
You're actually more vulnerable now than you were then because
you don't have the technological solutions that those didn't exist then.
Yeah, but
so you're faced with you're faced with a different set of societal based what ifs. Not quite the same, because back in the Great Depression, you didn't have self-driving cars driving around, perhaps doing so what's going to happen is that there's going to be things and functions where people won't be needed. And the machines will be needed. See, so we're talking about a completely different paradigm. So I don't see it. I don't see like collapse, decay, just wheat not being tended to. I don't see it like that per se. I really don't. I see it in terms of a technological. I never got the answer. Go ahead, dude.
What I'm saying is, what said. I think you're stopping, and I don't want to interrupt you because I want to.
No.
Not going to stop the decline.
In other words, the further you get away from base metal and depend on artificial systems, which is what we're talking about, our artificial systems, your food, your water, what you need to depend on. Okay. If you have a disruption in this highly connected, highly automated system and it actually fails, it's going to collapse. Where the basic system, where you don't depend on, actually you have individuals that are basically living off the land with their own water, their own food, their own whatever it is. Basically, you can't have a collapse because it's independent. Well, once you connect yourself to an automated system, an artificial system, you depend on artificial system. When it goes, it goes. Say like a difference between a rural town and a large metropolitan city. Okay. Okay. A rural town doesn't need, you have your own water. Each house probably has its own water system, own sewage system, whatever it is, right? When you live in a city like Los Angeles, you don't have that. If the sewage, the water, and the electricity goes, your town is dead. 10 million people are basically, they have to either leave or die, because you have such a sophisticated system that depends on this highly technological artificial system that if that system, if those particular systems fail, you're gone.
This okay. Okay. This not. It's not as if this is going to be like a light switch, right? Where we go from what we have now to all of a sudden robots are taking over everything. Okay. No, it won't be. It won't be. So, what can you name anything that just went from, being done by hand to not being? We skipped the whole humans using machine portion to. Okay, like in terms of technological rollout. Okay, if we're talking about from an infrastructure standpoint, and we're talking about full-on automation. Look, all the 5G towers aren't even up to accommodate all of it yet. So no, it's not going to be a light switch. Okay, it's going to be a rollout. They just, I think it's Chicago and Minnesota. Those are the two first test markets, where 5G is now up and going. You can go and buy a 5G phone, get it piped into the network, and experience all of the cell frying 5G goodiness. You can do that now, but it's not an infrastructure that's expanded to support and accommodate everything that I just talked about. Okay, so that's some time off. You have to kind of crescendo into it, and while you do that, you're going to be faced with problems and challenges and all of that. It's not going to be a switch and then everything just goes, and then problems just arise, and then there goes the upheaval of society. That's not even like the smart approach to take.
In other words, every technological age, it always depends on a system, and every system has a vulnerable kill switch somewhere in it, a bug somewhere in it, that if it goes off, it's going to kill everything, or it's started to cascade.
A cyber attack against any utility infrastructure in the United States could be cataclysmic.
That's true. That's true now. That's true now and in the future.
Basically, you almost had a cataclysmic collapse of the whole system in 2008. But that's not going to be what we're on now, because all the banks froze up. In other words, trade was actually going to freeze unless they did something.
And they did something. Right. So what I'm saying is that in the interest of global business, the movement of capital and resources, in the interest of keeping everything functioning, right? In the interest of not creating a situation of stasis. Okay. And so in lieu of all of that, you're damn right. You better figure it out. Right. And there is no interest in letting things just go. What? So you let it go to shit, and then what? We're going to just reboot human civilization development all over again? Are we going to do it consciously?
Well, the thing is, once you start a cascade effect, then you don't know where it's going to go. And if the cascade goes on far enough, well, like it can, then you have a dark age, which is everybody's afraid of. And those things are actually already in place if they don't fix them. They're already in place. It's already in place. If they can't fix the $200 trillion of debt and figure that out, who owes what, or what are they going to do about it, it's already in place. If we can't figure out what we're going to do with this $222 trillion in debt that's financially in the United States, also all the systems, all the debt we have in the United States, period, we don't figure that out, it's already happened. It's already there. We're walking on the edge as we speak. We're walking on the razor's edge as we speak. The fact that that it can't collapse is not true. The thing that it hasn't collapsed is a miracle, not that it can't.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that it can't collapse. I didn't say that. I said it won't be a catastrophic one. It'll be a controlled one.
Okay, if you say so.
Well, no one has a collective interest to allow that to happen.
It doesn't matter whether they have a collective interest for that.
Well, if it doesn't matter, then why did you just say that? Okay, well, there was either back in 2008, either you can do some sort of measure to stop the shit from happening, or you just let it go to shit. And what did they do? They stopped the shit from happening.
They stopped it before the Great Depression, and it still happened.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that there was an agreement that is not the best. That's not the best outcome. And everybody involved, that's not the best outcome.
And the reason that it is brought back up again is because those parties that formally agreed don't agree anymore.
Okay, they are okay, but even if I was a party that was involved in that, what interest do I have in just the entire planet going to shit? What interest does it serve anyone?
And human beings don't always factor that in, do they?
I'm a human being, and I'm literally bringing it up for discussion right now.
In other words,
and I'm not even like a world leader, so come on.
In other words, people go to war and kill hundreds of millions of people over an ideal because they're human beings.
Does the world stop operating though?
Does the world stop? The world won't stop operating.
Has the world stopped? Has the world stopped? This is my ultimate question: is the world stopped operating? Has it stopped functioning? Has it completely just gone into stasis?
It has before.
Stasis means death, so that means that there would.
Well, okay.
I'm not really sure if you and I have the same definition of what stasis means.
Well, stasis means it goes back. Stasis means what it goes back to what it was before we actually started this whole industrial age, which is like 400 million people on the planet.
Right. So basically, if we look at the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution, I don't see it.
Well, you're not okay. You're not looking at right. Why do you think? Okay.
Well, I'm a futurist, so I mean, that's my. I'm a technocrat and a futurist, so I mean, I'm looking at what it is that I'm actively involved in terms on the IoT development side of things and all of that.
Yeah, but you're not. So. Okay, but IoT is one thing. Okay, what people.
Well, no, I'm merely just mentioning that just from the fact that I'm involved in the technological development of a.
People don't eat IoT.
No, they don't.
They don't drink IoT.
They don't. No, they don't. I don't.
Even if it's GMO based, it takes power, it takes electricity, it takes systems.
And those systems will largely be responsible for food production, the things that people do eat. Yeah.
As long as basically you have an extremely long supply chain to make that happen, and there's tripwires all along the way. Mike can tell you. Mike's a programmer. There's tripwires all along the way. And everybody has to be in a place to do their job, otherwise the system will not work. Even today,
what is applied, what is applicable today will be applicable in the future. So just like how the systems of today can be compromised, there are contingencies to largely try to hedge that off and prevent it. And in any future systems, you will have the same thing.
And it doesn't always work.
Well, okay. Can you name for me like one thing that is like what is perfect?
Okay. Now, there's nothing.
Has your computer crashed on you recently?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Well, that's because he has a bootleg version of Windows, but that's a different story.
Well, actually not. I actually paid for it, Mike. So there. I have a new.
That's even worse. That's even worse.
I haven't even paid for it. I don't have a bootleg version of Windows. It's actually paid for. So there.
All right. I want you guys to give your closing thoughts because we're going to continue this discussion on Saturday. BGS Hangout. France and in Africa.
So basically, the reason that you see a UBI, the reason they're talking about debt cancel or basically a debt jubilee, the reason the whole fourth industrial revolution is actually proposed is because the system that you're actually on does not work. And basically, we're actually building it, but we haven't gotten there yet. So if you make it to a certain point, then the fourth industrial revolution will be wonderful. But if you don't make it, it's not going to be. It might not ever happen, and it might not happen for a very long time. And it's going to be ugly in between.
You know what? we're already here. You're just
not.
not seeing it. Yes, we are. Things are moving so fastly. Things are moving so fast and so quickly. We're in the fourth industrial revolution as we speak right now. Technologies are being developed and being further implemented every day. We're in the fourth industrial revolution right now.
The World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum just had a discussion Monday about this. That the fourth industrial revolution is already here.
We're in it now.
We're on the elbow, but there's a whole lot of stuff that they don't talk about that's behind the scenes that they need to get to. And they haven't got to. They haven't solved that problem yet.
But that is a part of. That's a part of the entire process.
So how do you
now?
How do you settle the $200 trillion debt? That's number one. How do you settle that?
Wait. Stop. Time out. Keep staying on the fourth industrial revolution.
What about it?
We're in the fourth industrial revolution right now. It's not coming. It's not on the way. We're in it right now.
We're on the cusp.
We're not on. You know what? I can appreciate that, and I respect that is your opinion. But we are in it right now, whether you agree or disagree. And I respect your opinion. I appreciate your opinion. But we're in that process right now, which is how industrial revolutions work. We're in it right now. We're not on the cusp. We're in it. We're wholeheartedly in it. Technologies are being researched, developed, and implemented every day. We're in it right now. The sky is the limit, but we are in it right now.
Okay. Can I may respond?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. We're on the cusp. We're on the elbow. Mike can tell you, I've been talking about this for like 4 years. And we're on the cusp of it. But the thing is, the bridge is that there's a whole lot of answers that we don't know what we haven't answered yet. What do we do with the people? What do we do with 8 billion people that we may or may not need? What do you do with them? Have you answered that question yet?
But
that question.
That's the question that came up at the World Economic Forum this week. That was what they were talking about.
That's what they're talking about. In other words, I'm asking Paul, what do you do with them?
That's a part of the process. What do we do with them? But that's a part of the process. Okay, that does not mean that because questions like that have not been answered as of yet, that does not mean that we're on the cusp.
You're okay. Okay.
I disagree.
Look, self-driving cars weren't perfected before they deployed them. You put them out on the field, and you have to get your data. You have to go and you have to deploy it. You have to put it out there, and whatever comes out of that, you deal with it in the most intelligent way to deal with it at the time that it needs to be dealt with. The fact of the matter is that if the infrastructure is there, they're not going to hold off on the rollout of this stuff because
they can't.
Of a question like, well, what are we going to do with all these people? People got to figure. Things are going to have to be figured out on that end.
Well, you got to basically, it's a worldwide problem, and basically the reason that you can't slow the rollout is because you're in competition.
That's my whole point. That's why I'm saying, like on the cusp of it. No. Look, it's actually here. Like I said, 5G is already in effect. You can already buy the phones for it. I work on IoT and GPS-based rideshare platforms. I developed the software myself. Okay, this is going to be like the basis of the fourth industrial-based infrastructure. Okay, that's the basis of it. So if you already have companies doing business right now, exchanging. Right, like for service, people are purchasing, rental time on a scooter. They go, drop it off, leave it there.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think what BGS is referring to is that the total transition of human resources. I think that's what he's referring to. That the human resources aspect hasn't been taken into consideration of what you're going to do with the applications for people. I think there has been several forums about what to do with people from not Sochi, the other forum, Davos. I think they talked about it then about what you're going to do with all these people and how you transition.
And they still haven't. And basically, if you can't figure out what you're going to do with the people, you won't have it. Until you figure that out, you're not going to have it.
Well,
you can't
that's
because it
why
would tear it down.
Differ. I mean, that's why I differ, because it's actually being rolled out right now.
It doesn't matter what you roll it out.
That is a limiting mindset, though.
No,
that is an absolutely limiting mindset.
Why is it limiting?
Because you're saying until you can figure out people, then you won't have it. However, that is being worked on and is in the R&D stage as we speak. So to say that until the question of how to fully integrate emerging tech with humans, we won't have anything. That is an extremely limiting mindset.
Okay, go ahead. You will have the technology, but you won't have the revolution. You have the technology, you won't have the revolution. There's a difference.
The revolution.
You know what? Maybe
the revolution references a replacing of old infrastructure. That's what it means. It's not like some social movement.
It is a social movement.
There's going to be a social movement as a result of new emerging tech, but we're talking about the technology. I'm not talking about people.
In other words, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, what are you going to do with all those, those poor people in Georgia? All the poverty in the conservative states down there that people don't want to address. How are you going to transition those people into the fourth industrial revolution? I mean, they're so worried about Venezuela, but they're not worried about Georgia though.
Well, look at your state, Mike. What is it? Stop and Shop? What's going on right now?
Oh yeah, yes, they're striking.
They're striking. In other words, and this is just the beginning. The Industrial Revolution would have been stopped in its tracks if it wasn't for socialism. They had to institute socialism as the deal between the people and the system. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had this Industrial Revolution. It would have stopped it in its tracks.
Yeah, but you see, but you know what?
For $15 an hour fast food jobs, you're going to get automated kiosks.
Basically, and I actually published this. Because I didn't know this, because I talked to a guy. He was an old Merrill Lynch guy, right? Started in 1973, so he was retired. He actually writes a newsletter, right? And Joe, and he actually mentioned something that I didn't realize. He said in 1964, the minimum wage was $1.25, right, an hour, which is an ounce of silver. Okay, what is an ounce of silver worth now?
$46, I think.
No, $15 and for an ounce of silver. So basically, your minimum wage in 1964 was $1.25, which was an ounce of silver. So what are they asking for now?
Same, still ounce of silver.
Which is supposed to be your minimum wage in this system. So, but what they're asking, and basically they talked about this. In fact, I'm actually going to bring that. I'm actually going to get on my laptop. I'm going to bring out my the article that was from Foreign Affairs where they talked about this like damn near 10 years ago. I'm actually going to bring that. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to actually sit up and actually do that. I'm actually going to publish that tonight.
Yes, but the implementation of people into emerging tech will not stop the development of emerging tech.
Yes, it will.
And it absolutely will not.
Yes, it will.
It never has in history.
Yes, it will.
No, it
will.
What absolutely will not.
What is your what? Okay. Say you build robots. You say you deal tech. What are you building it for?
Deployment.
For people.
Deployment usage.
No.
So if you
for various things.
What? Okay.
Some robots won't require people.
Who's using what the robots and the technology produces?
Who's using it?
Yes.
So new uses will be found for people to do things.
We assume that.
That's the way things have always worked.
And that doesn't mean they will always will. It's called, what they call black swans.
You gotta be kidding.
I'm serious.
Wait a second. You're telling me that at some point We will no longer be able to integrate people with emerging technology. Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
Paul, wait a minute. You know, there's all these scooters out on the street and no one's using them.
You know,
what I'm saying, in other words, if you don't integrate the people, at some point, what do you need the technology for?
Technology never stops advancing.
Okay,
it never has, and it most likely never will. Okay, so just because, to reiterate what I said, just because the answers to integrating people with emerging tech have not been figured out as of right now in April of 2019 does not mean that the development and rollout of emerging tech will stop. It will continue unabated.
Every time,
always has and always will.
No, well, the thing is,
smartphones. Everybody in mass rejected them, right?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Smartphones were actually here before the iPhone.
What I'm trying to find like.
But it was Apple who brought the smartphone to the masses.
Okay. One at a time. Okay. How do people pay for things?
Cash, debit card, credit card.
Okay. The cash, debit card, credit cards. Where do they get the money from?
A job.
A job. Okay. What if you replace all the jobs?
UBI, I guess, right?
People have to do something. People will do something.
How do you know? Protect yourself, deploy it.
Because historically, there have always been found a use for people. Okay, when the zipper was invented, people used to work in button factories. Okay, and people said, "What are you going to do with all the people?" Not everyone is going to go work in a zipper factory. They went to work in other factories. And when the zipper was invented, that was during the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, but
go ahead, D.
Yeah.
At that time, you weren't replacing the people with technology. You were replacing the technology changed, but you still needed the people. With this in this current system, or the system that's developing, you don't need the people. When you have technology doing the job that 40 million people used to do, you can't replace that. You can't find people. You can't find work for those 40 million people.
Yeah, we got
40 million people out. Those 40 million people are no longer contributing to the society. They're not earning money that they can spend.
And we already have. Basically, if you look at the workforce participation rate, right? We talk about adult males, adult people, right? It's only at 60%. What's happening with the other 40%?
Okay, what if the ugly truth though, right? What if the ugly truth is that this ultimately points to depopulation?
Thank you. I was just about to speak on that.
Can we swallow that pill for just a second? Can we swallow that one? Like, that's a very real reality.
I've already swallowed it. Yeah.
Right. So have I. So what I'm saying is, I'm speaking on the very real reality of things. Okay. What is a result of deploying this? What are the people going to do? Well, there might be people that are going to disappear.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. So are they going to go quietly?
Look, I won't be one of them. I can't speak for the ones who will be going quietly or not. I have no idea.
Well, you have to worry about that because you live in a country of like 326 million people. If 200 million out of work, are they going to go quietly? You don't live in the United States anymore.
Look, I'm not saying that I live in a bubble. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is this: I can't wholly be responsible for the remaining 300 some odd million people.
You can't be.
Right. So what I can do is I can inform. I can be an informed individual myself. I can look at ways of leveraging the technology, deploying it. I can look at ways of creating businesses and bringing other individuals in to create larger business clusters where we are developing and deploying different types of technology. Different things with regards to hemp and cannabis. Okay, so I mean, there's only things that I can only do as one person, right?
Oh,
You can't be responsible for how other individuals are going to choose to interface with this. I don't know.
And who are you selling these products to?
I'm selling them to people who needs them.
You know,
it's one thing that
it's the basic tenets of business. Like,
until the environment changes, then those basic tenets of business.
The environment is constantly changing. I don't wake up every day thinking that like last month is going to be like this month.
Well, you don't, but I do.
Okay.
Why?
I don't know.
That's my role here to think of those.
Huh? That's not my role, bro.
Why?
Yes, why?
Because you want to clear to inform my people of what may come and what might come or will probably come. That's number one. My people.
There's something you guys are not looking at.
It might sound funny, but the thing is, a lot of people have been either here on this panel have been forewarned by me doing it.
Look, for the past 7,000 years, the technology has allowed the population of the Earth to expand.
For the past, no, actually, it's the past 300.
No, what's key? No, D is
right. But currently, the technology that we're coming with now is going to shrink the population. It's going to continue to shrink the population. That's the only way this technology can advance.
But the thing is, how do you do it?
To the point where people either have to become a part of the technology, have to become the technology, or people on the planet Earth going to disappear.
So but basically, how does that come about? How do you
population?
I'm asking D. How do you depopulate 8 billion people? How do you do that?
There are several ways. You can poison the food supply. You can poison the water. You can poison the air. You can bring about sterilization and euthanization through pharmaceuticals. There are many ways to take a long-term approach to reduce the number from 8 billion back to 4 billion.
Back to 500 million.
500 million, yep. And
that's doom and gloom, but
no. That is the Malthusian have been saying that for the last 30 years. 500 million. I mean, if you look at what it was before the Industrial Revolution and what they actually proposed, that's a number. If you put in this technology, that's going to be the number. You don't need people.
I've seen that number. I've seen that number. I still disagree with it, but
I heard it from Helen Caldicott, who's supposed to be a progressive liberal, right?
She
said that.
I don't argue the number. I don't argue the number because I am aware of it. I've read it. I've come across it. But my point is, there are ways to depopulate the planet globally.
Yeah.
How do you go about it, though? How are you going to do it?
You can drop a virus that will eliminate that within a matter of years. But yeah, you can drop a virus to do that. The thing is that is draconian, is it not?
It is, but there throughout history have been many things that are draconian, and that hasn't stopped.
How do you know a few people that are smart enough that don't want to die won't do it to you?
Again, I don't. But until that happens, I can't live my life that way. I just can't. I refuse to live my life being doom and gloom. There is more than enough doom and gloom out there, and I can't worry. I personally refuse to worry about the masses who are going to suffer because they did not put themselves in the proper position. I can't worry about that because they're sheep and they don't want to change. And I am no one's shepherd.
Okay.
I'm not.
I am
no one's shepherd.
I am their shepherd.
Okay. Well, you know what? Have at it.
I'm glad.
I don't want it, and if you want it, feel free.
I am. Mike can tell you, I'm a shepherd.
Feel free.
We're going to need to shut this down because it's late on the East Coast. So give you guys 30 seconds to give you a closing
start. No, I already did. So I'll bid you guys.
All right, we'll see you Saturday. Have a good one, brother. Paul, go ahead.
Everybody.
What's that, Mike?
No, so you can give your closing thoughts.
Oh, well, pretty much said all that I've said. My closing thoughts are, listen, personally, I'm in a good position, and for those who are listening, do your research, continue to connect the dots, continue to think outside of the box. I would say that that's the best way to be prepared and forewarned against anything that will come. Educate yourself. Educate yourself. Gain as much knowledge as you can. Connect the dots. Go to seemingly unrelated sources of information because everything interconnects and everything is interrelated. And I'll leave it there.
DE?
Well, keep on watching what's going on with Assange, and you'll know the truth. You'll see what's going to come out and what's going to stay hidden. That's about it.
Ulysses? Complex? I think Complex is away. My closing thoughts are basically when Assange touches down on U.S. soil, this should be very interesting because this is the beginning of something very major that could affect just about everybody who's involved in journalism or what they consider to be citizen journalists. Everybody with an iPhone or some kind of smartphone recording information could be potentially detained as well. So, with that being said, thank you all for joining us and have a good night.